Good evening and welcome. We'll just have silence in the public gallery now, thank you. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're on here today and pay my respect to their elders both past, present and emerging. I would like to inform all those in attendance at this meeting that the meeting is being webcast and that those in the attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements concerning any person, councillor or employee, and refrain from discussing those matters subject to closed council proceedings as indicated in clause 14.1 of Code of Meeting Practice. Welcome tonight to our April meeting. Are there any apologies, please? All councillors are here today. Thank you. Declarations of interest?
I have one, Mayor Statham.
Yes, Councillor Coleman.
11.2.1, pecuniary interest. I'll be leaving the chamber.
All right, thank you, Councillor Coleman.
Excuse me, Mayor Statham. Is this the time to move a procedural motion or not yet?
Not at this moment, thank you. We'll go through a minute when we get down to the agenda items. Thank you. Confirmation of the meetings of the council meeting held on the 2nd of March 2022. Could I have somebody please move those minutes?
Yeah, happy to move.
Happy to see.
Councillor Bryce and Councillor Goodwin. No, Councillor Goodwin, I think, was in after Councillor Bryce. There were several put their hands up at the same time. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Commemorations and announcements. On behalf of Lithgow City Council, General Manager, councillors and staff, I would like to express our sincere sympathy and condolences for families who have lost loved ones since our last council meeting. Public forum. Any person registered to speak during public forum on matters included in the business paper and registered via the council website prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will have the opportunity to speak. There will be only 2 speakers for and against on each matter on the business paper. Public forum will be allocated half an hour time in total, with each speaker having 3 minutes to speak. Speaker not registered for public forum will have an opportunity to speak on matters on the business paper if time permits.
We've actually made an exception tonight.
You say that then, please.
More than 2 speakers.
You say that. No, you can do it on, please.
So I've just clarified for the gallery that we've made the exception tonight. The normal practice would be that there would be 2 speakers for and against, but clearly recognising the public interest in the rescission motion and that a number of other additional people have registered to speak, Council is making an exception to allow more people to speak.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I have 2 mayoral minutes this evening. As Mayor of Lithgow City Council, I was proud, in fact overwhelmed.
No, it's public forum first.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon, it's public forum. So with the first speaker, please, and the first speaker in order of putting a submission in is Stuart Dunbar. Cameron Churchill, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors, and a special thank you to everyone here in the gallery tonight. I'm speaking on Councillor Leslie's rescission motion that he intends to put forward today. I've emailed and spoken to each of you about the points that I believe are important when we factor in this rescission motion. You know that, you've already been told that. What I want to touch on today is that this is a really big deal. This is a really big deal for our health. This is a really big deal for the future of our town. This is a really big deal for you as elected members. It's a really big deal for council. The way in which this has been handled so far has not been up to the magnitude that we're talking about. We're talking about 500,000 tonnes of red bin garbage being burnt in our location. We're talking about a lot of money that would go to council through royalties. We're talking about a lot of real big issues. And we're also talking about a council that was voted in just in December that only had 2 members publicly supporting the incinerator. Given the magnitude of what is at stake here, I think it's only prudent that we accept Councillor Leslie's proposal today and reach out to the wider community. There is so much on the line and there is so much at stake. So many residents in town aren't even aware of what's going on, and our primary goal in this has been to get the voice out, because this is something that will affect all of us in one way or another. It's also very concerning to me because where one goes, many will follow. And I'm concerned that the people behind me, and I'm concerned that the councillors ourselves don't really understand what will be next from this. If I applaud Greenspot for opening the battery, I applaud Greenspot for looking to develop in our region. There is so much more to do than burning Sydney's garbage. There is a lot at stake for what will be next, and the consequences of which I don't even know, but I'm sure that we don't. That's all I have to say on this matter. If you did vote, and even if you went to the previous vote, an election, even if you went to the previous election...
Happy to move an extension.
Seconded.
Even if you went... Thank you for that.
I'll put it to the vote,
She's gotta
please.
put it-
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Continue, Mr Churchill, if you wish.
Thank you. For the councillors that went into the last election supporting the incinerator, please recognise how much this community does care. And I don't know the last time we had this many people in council chambers. For those that are debating it themselves, please do the right thing here and recognise the community interest, the deep community interest in the future of our town. Thank you.
Mrs Luca, thank you.
Thank you, Ms Statham. I also want to talk on the incinerator subject and just the transition of Lithgow's economy.
Excuse me, could you please speak up just a little
Sure.
bit? Thank you.
I think we can all agree that the Lithgow region is currently undergoing significant structural economic change that will only escalate in coming decades as a result of domestic and global changes in energy production. This is not news to any of us. We have already seen enormous changes as a result of the decommissioning of the Wellerawang Power Station and closure of Angus Place in 2015, losing some 800 full-time jobs, with hardly a whimper from the New South Wales government. The Western Coalfields and associated energy sector is the second most affected coal mining region per capita nationally in terms of expected job losses as a result of the transition away from fossil fuels. So why is it that we hardly rate a mention in terms of support and recognition from the New South Wales and federal government to assist our community in proactively shaping and creating our new future? I would like to know how Council and the New South Wales and federal governments are planning to support a fair and just transition for the Lithgow region, and why the decision to support energy from waste precincts in our area was made before genuine community consultation occurred. The support provided to the enactment of the New South Wales Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan through the PEOE regulation amendments, as resolved in March, is hardly recognition of a just transition or the principles of social equity and democratic process. Forcing a decision of this magnitude onto our community without any consultation is unjust and goes against every planning principle that underlies the New South Wales planning and environmental system. I have heard some councillors say that the resolution is only seeking further information and that nothing has been approved yet. Well, the reality of the March resolution actually gives the green light for energy from waste facilities in our area. The more information council requires will come in the form of development applications and EISs. And as council will not be the consent authority for these applications, you will have no more power than I do to object to these proposals. The draft regulations allow energy from waste within the West Lithgow precinct. The regulations also allow them on any former mine sites or former thermal electricity generating sites. So how many potential locations do we really have to accommodate these facilities? 2, 4, who really knows? All I can say with certainty is that they will come. And based on the vigour with which the New South Wales Government seems to be encouraging the private sector to develop these facilities, we could potentially see applications for at least 2 proposals in Lithgow in the next 2 years.
Happy to move an extension.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Is this really the future that you want for our community? The short-sighted and potentially devastating decision will create a very different future for our region than most of us had envisioned. The rhetoric and messaging from council around this issue exploits the fear of loss and uncertainty our community is feeling around our economic future, espousing that we have no alternative but to accept any job-creating industry at any cost. That is manipulation at its most powerful, coercing those in a vulnerable position to accept what is not acceptable under different circumstances, using rhetoric and greenwashing to mask the true intent of this decision. It's the ultimate abuse of power. Just transition for our community should not leave anyone behind and should most certainly be looking to positioning our region as an environmental and economic leader, espousing foresight, sustainability and community welfare at its core. We want a future where we can drink the water that comes off our roofs. We want to be able to eat the food we grow. We don't want to be dealing with the toxic outputs that come from burning someone else's rubbish. The New South Wales Government is erring on the side of caution by selecting regional sites for the incinerator precincts. What does caution even mean? Why is there a need to be cautious? The rejection of recent incinerator proposals at Eastern Creek on the grounds of uncertainty around health impacts raises further suspicion. Why is the health and well-being of our community any less important than that of the people of Western Sydney? A skeptic may say that this issue is less about jobs and regional development and more about votes and political agendas in the metropolitan areas. Energy from waste cannot be the answer for Lithgow's future. We deserve better.
Mrs. Ann Thompson, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I requested to address you tonight, and Karen has stolen a lot of my thunder, but nevertheless. You're about to debate, and I can only hope that it is a debate, that all councillors will have listened to the community members that have emailed you, gathered outside the chambers, and talked to you here tonight to express their disappointment in you as a council. I know that some of the councillors who sit around this chamber are quite new, and I'm sorry if I'm boring some of you and you have to keep flicking your pages, but...
Point of order. If that happens again, the people doing that, you're being televised, remember? So you're going to leave the chamber. So that's your first warning. Continue, please, Mrs. Thompson.
So I know that some of you sitting around this around this chamber are quite new, and you're elected to come into this chamber with an open mind and not preconceived or concocted versions of what you personally want or what you think is best for this community. You're elected to be the best versions of yourself, to put your community above all else, and it's quite clear to me over the past couple of months that this has not been the case. My objection is based solely on it is not a good fit for Lithgow. This type of development does not take us, the community, in the direction that we wish to go. Again, I agree with Mrs. Luca. If it's not good enough for Sydney, then why is it good enough for us? I'm sure if you were aware, but I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is no other council or state or federal member for backing these types of incinerators. They are all standing behind their communities, federal, state, and local councils, to say, we just don't want it here. It shouldn't go anywhere. It should not go anywhere. But they are all standing behind their communities and making sure that they support them. On the 10th of September last year, when it was announced by the EPA and the state government that Lithgow was going to be one of the 4 precincts that was included for these incinerators, Goulburn, Richmond Valley, Lithgow and Parks, I was absolutely astounded that they could do this without any public consultation whatsoever. I'm furthermore astounded that we as a council, or you as a council, could make this decision to support Greenspot, Wallerawang being part of the West Lithgow precinct without any consultation. I've heard the jobs are the main driver behind this, and I can understand that. We do need jobs, but as Mrs. Lucas said, at what cost? We have missed out on opportunities that have gone to other councils,
Happy to
such
move.
such as the train maintenance facility that went to Dubbo. There was a train driving facility that was the proponents who were building it wanted to bring it to Lithgow. They came to the council who supported it, but it was not supported by our local member. There was the renewable energy zone, Central West Orana, New England, Southwest, Hunter Central and Coastal Illawarra regions. They were all included in this precinct. The pilot res is expected to be shovel ready in 2022 and expected to bring an estimated 5.2 billion in private sector investments to the Central West Orana region, of which Lithgow is not a part. And then lastly, the more recently announced by the Deputy Premier, the Parks plastic recycling facility that was announced. Surely that would have been a good fit for the Greenspot site. The Mayor of Parks went to major lengths to state that this recycling facility that they were given was not combustible. All these industries would have created jobs, good jobs, clean jobs, and jobs that certainly would have helped our economy. This community-driven action is not political, except to point out the failings of this government and previous governments who have taken so much from our community and given so little back. There is no agenda here. The agenda is our town. It was residents, ratepayers, retired school principals, health workers, mental health workers, engineers, teachers, retired and current business people and retired councillors that stood out the front of this building on Tuesday. It wasn't a noisy rabble. So in closing, I'd like to ask you to rescind this motion, or at the very, very least, call a public community meeting. If you as councillors believe in what you're doing and it is the right thing, then you should have no trouble whatsoever addressing the public and letting the public ask questions and have their say. If you do not rescind this, the contempt that you have held this community in over the past few months will pale into insignificance with the contempt that some of you will be held in for the next 3 years. Also, if you do not call a public meeting, the Lithgow Community Action Group has called a meeting for the 3rd of May at the Wallerawang Community Hall, and you are all invited. Federal Clare candidates have been invited, and there will be some industry knowledgeable and speakers that will speak on this incident. Thank you.
A representative, please, from the Wallerawang Progress Association.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for allowing us to address you. I'm here representing the board of Wallerawang Community and Sports Club and also the Wallerawang Lidsdale Progress Association. We have been through years of torment in this local government area through a lot of silence. There was always silence when we lost Balebone Colliery, Wallerawang Power Station, Angus Place Colliery. You didn't see people jumping up in arms because these dirty things had left our district and the jobs had left, all the apprenticeships have left. But now we find ourselves with an opportunity, and you councillors have got the opportunity to stand up and for once take our LGA into a forward motion by letting Greenspot and their associated companies develop with our approval and public intervention on how it works, listen to them, respond to them, respond to the community, make sure it is clean, make sure it is not unhealthy, make sure it provides the jobs and the development and the money back into this territory, and not shut down something else again. It was unanimous at the last meeting of the Lidsdale Wallerawang Progress Association and the Wallerawang Community and Sports Club. It was unanimous to support you people to allow Greenspot to negotiate with this community, and it is Wallerawang, remember. It ain't the outskirts of our LGAs, it is our town where this facility is to be developed. We ask you people to continue on and try and negotiate with Greenspot and their companies to make this happen. You can be the council that's, in years to come, they're the people that turned us around. They're not the people that stopped us again from getting something to come here. Because we go through the history of the diesel workshop going, all them collieries going, Wallerawang Power Station going. We go through this over and over again, and we let it happen. We did not protest enough, and now we are protesting again in parts of the community to stop something else. I have had several discussions with members of this organisation, with our two organisations, and they want you to listen. They want you to try and be our saviours for once. Not let this go. Please do not rescind this motion. Allow them to continue in this community, negotiating with us. Let the community ask the questions. Let them answer them. Go along to the meetings they hold. Don't go along to heckle. Go along to listen. Go along and learn. Please. Second.
All those in favour say aye for an extension. Thank you. Continue on. Thank you.
There is 4 sites available. I believe this development is our saviour. This council has the opportunity to be the council. By pressing our local members to back this project through to its completion, and then look back as other industries take up on the site and bring employment back to our future generations. And I'm talking about not my kids, I'm talking about my grandkids, my great-grandkids. Where we used to have hundreds of apprenticeships here in this district, we now have maybe 20. Because we have just repeatedly let things go, let things go. You can buy 32 places you can buy coffee in Lithgow. You won't finding 32 places in Lithgow where you can get an apprenticeship. So please, do not rescind that motion. Keep backing. And if it isn't going to be clean, isn't going to benefit our area, then make the decision to knock it back. But do not do that tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Our next speaker this evening will be Greer Ashworth. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and gallery. Hello. I seek clarification regarding what, if any, agreement has been reached between Lithgow Council and Wallerawang Waste to Energy proponents on the issue of royalties and any other form of compensation.
Mr Muir, would you please answer that question?
Thank you, Mayor Statham. The answer is no. Typically, in the development process, negotiations on contributions happen within the context of the DA process. Of course, there are many examples in subdivisions and mines and quarries and the like. Another example might be the two battery proposals, which are far more advanced in the planning system. There's been some initial discussions there. So if and when a proposal gets to that stage, that's when those discussions would occur.
Thank you, Mr Muir. Thank you, Greer Ashworth. Our next speaker tonight will be Brett Hawkins, Chief Executive Officer of Energy from Waste. Thank you, Greenspot. Greenspot, beg your pardon.
Excuse me, sorry, the microphone's not working.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to address Council tonight on this very important subject. I spoke at the March meeting where Council voted to endorse the inclusion of the Wallerawang Power Station in the State Government's Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan. And I'm here tonight to articulate Greenspot's position in relation to the proposed notice of rescission. I have 4 points to make. First, it has been suggested by some that Council has backflipped on its position. Since the initial vote in September last year, Council has been made aware of significant new information about modern facilities. Based on that new information, Council has, in our view, acted responsibly to keep an option open for investment and to allow community consultation on the subject, where a blanket opposition would probably be intended to have the opposite effect. Second, while some community members oppose energy from waste, there are a great many who support it and even more who are open to considering the opportunity. Members of the Wallerawang Lidsdale Progress Association, for example, who are represented here this evening, have taken the time to assess the merits and look at the facts to formalise their position of support. Other business owners and families have urged us to continue the effort to keep this option alive. Third, respectfully, Greenspot does not agree with the opinions put forward in the following motion by Councillors Leslie, Coleman and Marnie. This is because we have learned the following from industry experts. Modern facilities are safe. Regulation in New South Wales will ensure that human health and environmental outcomes are not compromised. The suggestion that if it's not safe for Sydney, it's not safe for Lithgow is baseless. It would be safe in Sydney. The New South Wales Government strategy is enabling large-scale investment.
Talking in the gallery, everyone has their own right to have their say. Thank you.
The New South Wales Government strategy is enabling large-scale investment in regional New South Wales rather than in Sydney. Australia has an unsustainable and urgent waste problem. Energy from waste plays an important role in the transition to a circular economy. It does not take away from recycling initiatives. It diverts non-recyclable waste from landfill, mitigates greenhouse gas emissions, and treats waste as a valuable resource. Specific to our site, an energy from waste facility would generate around 50 megawatts of baseload power, as well as heat and usable CO2. This will in turn attract additional investment from industries seeking to co-locate. Hundreds of jobs would be generated in industries such as manufacturing, recycling, and food production in state-of-the-art glass houses. This is not speculation. Feedback has been received from businesses interested in our site.
Happy to second.
All those in favour say aye. We're in extension. Thank you. Carried.
All of these things, together with residential, tourism, and recreation, can coexist. Fourth and finally, there have been cases of misleading imagery and language used by some of those who oppose energy from waste. This creates unnecessary fear and anxiety and does not lend itself to constructive dialogue. I agree with Anne. I agree with Cameron. I see Tom over there as well. I see many people have attended our sessions, and we agree that constructive dialogue is essential. We have learned an enormous amount from meeting with community members and are very grateful to those who have, in many cases bravely, come forward to share their experience and views. The Wallerawang Power Station has the potential to be a world-class example of how a coal-fired power station can be regenerated in a way that helps to diversify and build resilience in the local economy. Greenspot respectfully asks councillors not to rescind your support, to allow this important topic to be thoroughly and properly assessed on the facts, and to preserve the opportunity to work through challenges together.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Gay Mason, would you like to come forward, please?
I did ask to make two statements. Can I have two separate 3 minutes, or do you want me to?
No,
let
of course you
someone else
can.
have a turn?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. My name's Gay Mason. I live in Lithgow. And I want to put a question to council about the homeless man who's living in Cook Street Plaza. Lithgow currently has a number of people who are homeless. Most of the community realise homelessness is a complicated issue without simple solutions, and that the individuals possibly have mental health issues that need to be taken into account. Most of the homeless seem to have found somewhere they can sleep and keep their possessions out of sight. One person, however, has decided to make his home very publicly in Cook Street Plaza, where he lives surrounded by his growing collection of belongings, and he's now been there for 2 or 3 months. It's a tribute to the community that he's been accepted by most people and cared for and supported by quite a few. To the best of my knowledge, he hasn't been attacked or stolen from. People give him money, food, coffee, clothes, blankets, sleeping bags. But there are also people who aren't happy to have him there, people who are scared of him, or who worry about the effect on our community's reputation. Lithgow now has a recently opened supported accommodation for homeless people. This particular person can't or won't use it. I have a few particular concerns. Firstly, Cook Street Plaza houses the statue of Marjorie Jackson, which attracts tourists to visit the location. They and people arriving here by train are immediately faced with a homeless person and his possessions. They don't know what measures are in place to assist the homeless or how much individuals are doing to help him. They just see a homeless person who's living in the centre of our CBD. Wow, they must think. Homelessness must be a really big problem here. Why isn't Lithgow doing something about it? Secondly, what if word gets around there's great living homeless in Lithgow's Main Street? People look after you. The authorities don't interfere. There are 4 other covered areas in Cook Street Plaza and nothing to stop 4 more people coming to live there. What will happen if they do? Thirdly, regulations prevent people, local or tourist, free camping in tents or caravans anywhere in Lithgow for longer than 48 hours. Yet this person's been allowed to camp in the centre of our city indefinitely. This doesn't exactly seem fair to everyone. What is going to happen when winter hits with nightly frost, possible snowfalls and frequent icy winds? Are you as a council going to leave him there at risk of frostbite or freezing? In particular, my question for you is this. Do you have the regulations, bylaws or whatever it is that you need?
Happy to move an extension.
All those in favour say aye for Mrs. Mason. Thank you.
Do you have the regulations, bylaws or whatever it is that you need in place to allow you to make him move somewhere for the good of the community and the individual? If you can make him move somewhere less conspicuous and safer, please do so. If you can't do so at the moment, then please put the required regulations in place that will enable you to do so, preferably before winter hits with a vengeance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mason. Thank you for all that information, and I actually know exactly what you're talking about. 5 weeks ago, I had a meeting and the providers came up from Sydney with 4 other members of the council staff, and we had a lengthy meeting with the 2 main providers, and they have assured me within 3 months they will be doing something more constructive about what they're doing at the homes you've been speaking about. We certainly don't want to have Lithgow turned into somewhere for homeless people, and we also realise that they have to feel comfortable and feel needed and have somewhere to go. Mr McGrath will also say something brief on what has happened, but we can assure you council has no responsibility, unfortunately, to eradicate people from our main street. The police, I've had meetings with the police 2 weeks ago. I had the superintendent here, and I know Councillor Goodwin will agree with me. Unfortunately, the police hands are tied. We are doing everything we can to encourage people not to be street people, and Mr McGrath will verify what I'm saying.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I can confirm that we did have a meeting with the superintendent here in Lithgow on the 11th of April, and his recommendation was that his council set up a meeting with the Department of Housing as a matter of urgency and involve the police and other key stakeholders in that meeting to try and get the state government to assist in this matter.
Right, the second issue I want to speak on is the beautification of the streetscape through tree planting and cleaning up the verges, which is item 9.1 on the agenda. I said that I oppose the motion, but I actually agree with much of what Councillor McGee is proposing, where people who maintain their own footpaths are allowed to plant them as they wish. My point of opposition comes when he suggests using only small to medium low maintenance trees. They should be encouraged to plant large, shady trees wherever possible. I like maples. They look good in summer. They're beautiful in autumn. We have plenty of small and medium-sized natives and other trees that would be suitable and look great. Absolutely. Large trees should not be planted under power lines where they have to be butchered to avoid damaging the wires or starting fires. Lithgow used to have many such trees, which are mostly now being removed. But not all our streets have overhead wires on both sides. Planting our footpaths is not just for beautification, but also to improve our living conditions. Wherever we can do so, we need to plant large, shady trees to help cool our houses, our cars, our gardens, our roads. We need to use whatever means possible to cool our environment during summer to lower our consumption of energy for cooling. Research has shown that roads shaded by trees are 10 to 12 degrees Celsius cooler than those without shade. People enjoy our parks and gardens and go into bushland areas because they're cooler. They have a variety of plants, birds and animals. We park in the shade in car parks or, for example, opposite Bunnings because it's so much more pleasant getting into a cooler car and you don't have to waste petrol cooling it down. Shade to parking on the street where we live is wonderful. Birds, including most of our parrots, as well as smaller species, live and nest high in trees where we can't reach them easily. So do many of our native animals. We need big trees if we're going to have wildlife in our city. Now let's look at the maintenance aspect. Councillor McGee refers to the high cost of maintenance of the very large oak trees at Hoskins Church. Yes, they do require a lot of maintenance now, but that's only been the case for the last 20 years at most. The trees are now approximately 80 years old and live basically maintenance-free for the first 60 years. With a program of staggered planting and removal, avenues of such trees could be maintained looking magnificent with only the cost of removal after, say, 40 years. I don't agree we can't have big shade trees because of maintenance issues. Too often in the past, when councils removed a large tree, they've replaced it with a smaller tree or bush, or not at all. Come on, council, plant more big trees. Encourage footpath planting of big tall trees wherever possible. People need and love them. Our earth needs them too.
Thank you everyone that participated in public gallery this evening. It was actually nice to finish on a bright note. Well, I'm sure you'll all agree it was very nice what Mrs Mason had to say. My commentary for the Mayoral Minute. As Mayor of Lithgow City Council, I was so proud, in fact overwhelmed, to see such broad cross-section of the community at the city's many Anzac Day services yesterday. The showing of respect and recognition of those who have served their country was touching. There were large crowds. In fact, many people commented to me that there were the largest crowds at Anzac Day meetings that they have seen in the city, villages and local towns. Thank you to the school children who represented their schools. This gives me great confidence that the commemorations will be strong into the future. Lithgow Public School does a lovely display every year to commemorate Anzac Day. A special thank you to them for their patriotic floral display decorating the Anzac gates at the intersection of Bort and Esbeen Street. On behalf of our communities, I also extend the thanks to the various RSL sub-branches and others who held their events. There is a tremendous amount of organisation that goes into these events each year, and it is all done voluntarily. Lithgow Council was very proud to have played a part in assisting in the logistics of this event, as was the local police. As Mayor, I'm pleased that all the councillors assisted me to represent the council at many events throughout the city, and I thank them for this. I would like to put my Mayoral Minute, please. All those in favour? Thank you. My second Mayoral Minute gives me a great pleasure to announce that I attended the wonderful community event on the 24th of April, where there was a large crowd attending the 150th anniversary of rail services first arriving at Taranah in April 1872. This event was organised by the Taranah Community. This event was organised by the Taranah Community Group in conjunction with Transport New South Wales. Mr Howard Collins, Chief Operations Officer, Greater Sydney Transport for New South Wales, was there for the event. The Taranah markets, with their quality stalls and food on offer, were held on the same day and enhanced the railway anniversary celebrations and were much appreciated. Thank you to the organising committee for this historic event. I was very pleased to hear that the Transport for New South Wales is in process of repairing and restoring the railway station and associated buildings to ensure that they are preserved for the future and can focus on as community spaces. Works will be staged, with the first stage to involve upgrading the waiting room and toilets for both rail customers and the general public. Taranah is a very popular weekend and holiday destination, and so these amenities will be very appreciated. Could I have please somebody, while I put my Mayoral Minute, please? I'll put. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes, I'm happy to second that. If I may, I'd like to speak to it.
I don't need a seconder, but you're very welcome to have a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. This 150th anniversary of rail service is a continuing event. I represented Lithgow Council in 2017 when the rail reached Mount Victoria, and former councillor Thompson represented Lithgow when it reached Lithgow in 2019, and now it's got to Taranah in 2022. It just shows the march of progress that occurred in our state in the 1800s, opening up this country, heading towards Bathurst and beyond. But there's a downside to this, of course. We must always keep in mind that whilst some people, made a great benefit and opened up the state as such, it wasn't necessarily a great thing for the Wiradjuri people. They of course ended up, in many cases being dispossessed, and other Indigenous communities win. So whilst we celebrate, the extension of the rail and how the country was changed, we'd always bear in mind, that the consequences to some other people and groups in our community.
Councillor Leslie, I was really delighted to see a member from the Indigenous group from Wiradjuri speak at the event on Saturday, and he was applauded welcomely. And it actually was their 150th event, not their 149th or the 110th or whatever. 150 is a wonderful milestone for Taranaki, and the residents embrace this. So thank you for your thoughts. Can I have somebody please move that Councillor Leslie has spoken, and a seconder, thank you. And I'll put the Mayoral minute. All those in favour say aye. Against? You're against, are you, Councillor Leslie?
Madam Mayor, I spoke in support of your Mayoral minute.
Well, you didn't show your hand.
And I extended to it. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I'm happy. I was happy to vote for it, and I'm surprised that you would think otherwise.
I just didn't see your hand up. Sorry.
He certainly said aye.
(9.1) Notice of motion.
This is where I'd like to do a procedural motion, Mayor Statham. I was just thinking that the majority of the gallery are here tonight to hear about the energy from waste, so I'd like to move that the notice of rescission 10.1 item be discussed first before Councillor McGee's notice of motion.
Certainly, Councillor Goodsell. Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Mayor Statham.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. All those in favour say aye. Yes, no worries whatsoever. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. So we'll immediately move to 10.1, Notice of Rescission, New South Wales Government Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan. Councillor Leslie?
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I move that that we rescind motion ECDEV 120322 Energy from Waste 22/35, which was carried by Lithgow City Council on the 2nd of March 2022.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman.
I wish that that I could speak as clearly, as passionately, as considered and as articulately as Mrs. Luca did in a public forum. It was, I've rarely heard a speech that was so accurate and covered the issues so precisely. 333 days is how long we have to stop this toxic incinerator. The next...
Point of order, Mayor Statham, it's not a toxic incinerator, it's an incinerator.
Look, if Councillor McGee wishes to call it a healthy and wholesome
Councillor
incinerator,
Leslie,
he may
please
do
don't
so.
interfere. I'll accept your point of order, Councillor McGee, because it is not a toxic incinerator. So please continue.
Who says? Who says it's not a toxic incinerator?
Everything says if you bother to go to the council...
McGee, I'll speak from here, thank you.
Councillor McGee wishes to refer to this incinerator as a healthy, wholesome incinerator, well, he can do so.
Not at all, but if you had bothered to go to any of the information sessions, you would know that it's an incinerator.
And I really...
Point of order, please.
And I find his objection a bit pathetic, actually. But anyway,
well, it's
I'll move on.
not pathetic, it's the truth, Councillor Leslie. Thank you. Remember,
333 days
excuse me,
is how
Councillor
long
Leslie.
we have... I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Remember, you're on live streaming. So just remember that, so you can back. Thank you. Continue, Councillor Leslie.
Thank you. I'm just waiting for the little machine there. Thank you. The next state election will be held on the 25th of March next year, only 333 days away. The West Lithgow precinct was chosen by National Party Deputy Premier Mayoral after Western Sydney was ruled out as a site for this, what some people may call a toxic incinerator. Too hazardous for Eastern Creek, but not to worry, we can put it in Paul Toole's electorate of Bathurst. And just to make certain the New South Wales Liberal National Party government gets its way, this proposal has been made a state significant development. Only the New South Wales government can stop this ... development in our area. Lithgow Council, in a pathetic display of Lithgow Council, in a pathetic display, has agreed to support the inclusion of the old Willerowang Power Station in that precinct. People won't forget that betrayal. Hence this rescission motion. This is an opportunity for Lithgow Council to stand up for the people of Willerowang, Lidsdale, Blackman's Flat, Marangaroo, and those of us in the valleys in our city. Lithgow Valley, the Wolgan Valley, the Capity Valley, and the Hartley Valley. Canyons that will accumulate emissions and mix them with the ever-present inversion layers over these valleys. Build this ... incinerator, and acid rain will fall on Willerowang forever. An incinerator is not a compost heap. The infrastructure costs are huge, and once built, will need to be fed with plastics and other waste forever. We come to our state member, Paul Toole. Where is he? Has he answered any of the numerous emails sent to him? It's a state significant development. Why hasn't he put up an article on his Facebook page telling us why he supports this proposal? Or is he just hoping that Lithgow Council wears all the criticism? We see him all the time in his monogrammed high-vis shirts. Why not outside the old Willerowang Power Station? If he thinks we will not hold him accountable, or we will forget about this sometime during the next 333 days, he is very much mistaken. But to the substantive issue, waste incinerators are a hazard to public health and the viability of our farming lands. The significant air pollutants emitted by these waste incinerators, such as particulate matter, acid gases, oxides of sulphur and nitrogen, and innumerable substances of unknown toxicity, pose a significant threat to public health and to the environment. The major impact on health is a higher incidence of cancer and respiratory symptoms. Other potentials are congenital abnormalities, hormonal defects and stillbirths, and low birth weights. Heavy metals such as lead and mercury cause neurological diseases. Toxic chemicals such as PFASs and dioxins can cause cancer and other health problems. Remember, the source material is already a highly complex material. It is not a simple carbon like coal. These gases and pollutants are mostly heavier than air and will congregate in our box canyons, the Wolgan Valley, the Lithgow Valley, the Hartley Valley, but they will be highly concentrated over Willerowang, mixing with the regular fog that comes off Lake Wallace. And as that sun warms, those chemicals will drop on Willerowang. We need to rescind this motion now and let the state government know if it's unsafe in Western Sydney, it's unsafe here in Lithgow.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. One of the themes at the last council meeting was City Pride, mentioned in a mayoral minute. I completely agree that we have the most wonderful assets, heritage buildings, parks, gardens and sporting facilities. But most importantly, it's beautiful landscape backing onto a national park. For me, City Pride also includes not allowing Sydney to turn the greater city of Lithgow into its own personal garbage tip, a tip town. I believe that we are better than this. We deserve better than this. We should insist on better than this. It does not convey city pride to allow the state government, the previous and current National Party Deputy Premier, to bully the Lithgow community into a project that it clearly does not want. I recently received an email that was misogynistic and arrogant, a clear attempt to bully me. Like that email, which I deleted, this project needs to be deleted. I'm being told that 85 jobs are significant, But jobs at any cost are just not acceptable. Cost to health, cost to surrounding environment. The Liberal MP Wendy Tuckerman from Goulburn, who supports her community, stated in Parliament that there is nothing in the Chief Scientist's report that provides her with any certainty that the New South Wales government, her government, Energy from Waste plan does not pose any threat to the health of the community or supporting environment. In simple terms, there is no guarantee that the health of residents will be protected. Prior to the local government election, I opposed the project, and after further consideration, I still oppose the project. Those who voted for me last December will have the opportunity, like other candidates that stand accountable at the next New South Wales local government election, which is September 2024, which is only over just 2 years away. I acknowledge that a small group of community are in favour of the project. However, what the community can trust is that I have the integrity to stand by my values. The project raises the following concerns: emissions, transport of the waste, the scale of the project. This is why I cannot support the Cleanaway incinerator and sign the rescission motion.
Any other people wishing to speak, please? Right of reply, Councillor Leslie, then, if there's nobody else wishing to speak.
No, there's other people to speak, but I thought Councillor Marnie's signed this as well. He wanted to speak.
No, he didn't put his hand up. Would you like to speak, Councillor Marnie? Because you did. I'd like you to speak. You signed the rescission motion, so I'd like you to speak now, please.
A point of order, Madam Mayor. If Councillor Marnie wishes to reserve his right to speak,
that's fine.
Then he's perfectly able to do so. Yes.
Councillor Goodsell said he had his hand up before she did. So
I mean,
happy for
you're chairing the meeting. I think you should be able to do so.
Well, I'd like Councillor Marnie, if he's on the rescission motion as a signature, I'd be very happy for him to speak. All right, no worries. Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak?
I don't want to jump the gun. Does anyone else want to go before me? I'm good to go. Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I would like to start off by saying thank you to each and every person that's turned up here tonight that's spoken against this proposal. You are angry, you're disappointed, you're frustrated. Many of you are friends, and I understand, and I applaud you for speaking so passionately about something so important. Although I see this proposal differently, and just because I don't agree to oppose this proposal outright doesn't mean I don't understand. I do. It is important to hear all points of view, and I respect your opinions. I also have concerns about this proposal, as does Council, which is reflected in the recommendation carried on March the 2nd. I don't want to be identified as one of the councillors that voted for this proposal in September. 100% not true. I voted for the council recommendation on that day, which was to ask for more information. I didn't vote for the proposal, and I didn't vote against it. I voted with the council recommendation for a proposal that was dumped on us very, very quickly by the state government we knew nothing about.
That's correct.
I just want to make that clear. That was before the election, that I voted for more information, not for or against this proposal. My role as a councillor is to consider all proposals that come before 21,000 residents and make every effort to ensure the best outcome is made on behalf of the entire community. How can I possibly oppose this proposal outright on behalf of every resident when the facts, benefits and impacts on this proposal, and this proposal only, not Eastern Creek, not anywhere else in the world, on this proposal only, are not yet known? Excuse me. If this proposal doesn't comply with a rigorous environmental impact process, I'll be the first to say it's not for our community. If it does, it could be the beginning of an exciting future for our local government area that has the potential to which currently has the potential to remain stagnant, and with the loss of coal mining jobs, incomes and families into the future, and we take no action, we may miss an opportunity. The Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan by the New South Wales Government has defined that thermal waste energy facilities can proceed in our community. Energy for waste is permissible currently in our community. It is important to say that councillors or council have not approved or proposed this development. The New South Wales Government has determined the areas, and the decision will be made by the New South Wales Government. Council's position on the draft regulation is very important. If we refuse this facility outright, in my opinion, it will not allow council to work with a developer to shape the best possible outcomes for our city if this proposal was to go ahead determined by the government. I will not support any proposal which will have a negative impact on our community's health or environment, and this can only be determined through an environmental impact statement. It was also very, very important for me to look at this proposal individually. And this is the only document before us today. The developer also has no interest in this development if it has negative impacts on our community and our environment. Council's position at the March 2 meeting is to a concept plan only, possibly to include Wallerawang precinct to be considered by the government. This process will require significant planning work to be considered for the EPA and preparation of an environmental impact statement and a significant community consultation and a publicly transparent DA process. In addition to the energy waste facility, my consideration also needs to be given to the potential on-flow effect and it being a possible catalyst for other industries to be set up in the area. There is still currently an application for an energy waste facility to be located at Mount Piper, which Energy Australia decided not to proceed with at the end of last year. However, it still remains in the planning system. Effectively, all council has done is support the facility to be relocated from Mount Piper to Wallerawang. For this facility to go ahead, it will have to comply with international standards to protect the health and the environment. As a councillor, I need to understand the pros and cons, make a decision on behalf of 20,000 residents without bias nor influence. Why can't I consider the possible $1.5 billion value of the development, the possibility of 800 long-term jobs and 1,500 jobs during development with new industries? They include a big battery, advanced manufacturing, protected cropping, logistics and intermodal rail and road activities, the potential for hydrogen production and a hydrogen refuelling facility for major rail services, education and tourism. The Council's submission on the 2nd of March was developed only after careful consideration of all of the facts for and against the Energy to Waste plan. They are as follows, and I'd like to read them out. It's very important that the community understand the facts of the resolution that we put on the 2nd of March. That Council retains its concerns in relation to the lack of consultation in selecting a site in Lithgow. Point 2, the New South Wales Government be required to deliver an extensive community consultation and engagement program around energy for waste. 3, that Council indicate that whilst it removes its blanket opposition to the Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan, that it is conditional upon government building a mechanism to ensure economic benefit flows through to its communities. Point, Council requests that the New South Wales Government provide a dedicated mechanism whereby government provides investment attraction support for enterprises seeking to locate to the vicinity of energy for waste facilities. Point, Council requests that the New South Wales Government provide funding for any required infrastructure to support the establishment of enterprises seeking to locate into the vicinity of energy of waste facilities. Point, Council support the inclusion of the site and surrounds of the former Mayoral power station as a precinct within the Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan, subject to further targeted consultation occurring. Point, a requirement for energy from waste facilities to make ongoing contributions to local government areas based on tonnages processed at the facility. Point, the plan be accompanied by a framework to ensure that the carbon consequences of energy for waste are dealt with by material compounding the carbon reduction benefits, going well beyond a landfill versus energy for waste offset argument. Point, nearly there, sorry. A specific requirement of Greenspot that Council's non-opposition to inclusion of their site as a precinct is conditional upon further extensive community consultation and agreement of a long-term enduring royalty being paid to Council. should any future development proposal proceed, which council may use as at its discretion on infrastructure, community facilities, programs and ongoing operations. Dot point, while council no longer has a blanket opposition to inclusion in the infrastructure plan and draft regulation, it maintains its right to comment and, if necessary, oppose individual developments if it is the view of the environmental planning, health or any other impact outweighs the benefits of a specific project. And last of all, that no less than 80% of the refuse be transported to Lithgow by rail. It wasn't a fact that we were just supporting outright. There's a lot more to it, and that's the recommendation that went through with much consideration from the council staff that was voted on the 2nd of March. And thank you for listening, but I won't be supporting this rescission motion.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Marnie.
All right. I take this decision very seriously to rescind the decision of council, and I have listened to the speakers, and the speakers spoke about, and I thank Steve Jackson coming from Wellerwang and Lidsdale Progress Association. I'm the only councillor in the room that's attended all 3 public meetings. I also attended a meeting a couple of years ago about the Eastern Creek proposal. I'm not someone who arrives at a decision through a feeling. So I've put quite a lot of time looking into this. I've looked into the Dublin suggestion, which is run by Covanta, and I've looked at the record of Covanta in the US. People can Google, look at the Philadelphia Inquirer, a reasonably reliable news feed, who talk about a 6-figure fine for breaching emissions. I personally can't support something that I don't think is in the interest of the community. My apologies, I've just lost my notes, so just one moment, please. The other thing I've looked at is we only just recently attended a special New South Wales local government conference where the conference had a motion put in front of it that, and I'm going to read this directly so I don't misquote it, that local government New South Wales acknowledges the concerns regarding the impact of waste to energy incinerators on community and the environment. Notes that the draft regulation, the Environmental Protection Authority EPA Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan would prohibit waste to energy incinerators in some places and not others. A consistent and strongly held view amongst members of our community, which they spoke to tonight. If it's safe enough for this to be placed here in Lithgow, why isn't it being placed closer to the source? And that's been a consistent message that's been given to me throughout my time listening to people at public meetings, as well as talking to people and people writing to me. The motion also considers burning waste for energy and outdated technology and encourages diversion rather than incineration. Now, that decision was carried by the majority of delegates at the conference. They were councillors from across New South Wales who carried that motion. And we as a council, and I think Councillor Coleman spoke to this about, or in fact maybe one of the speakers spoke to it, around the fact that their councils were behind their communities and so were their local members. I still am not convinced that waste incineration doesn't create an unacceptable risk to the health of the communities that surround them. I'm still unclear that anyone is able to give me a indication the operating systems are able to retain all hazardous substances. And we're talking about dioxins, furans, mercury, cadmium, arsenic. I'm not going to go through the periodic table for everyone. And the potential for this to be a chronic 24/7 exposure to low-level heavy metals, acid gas and persistent organic pollutants, whether that's by ingestion or inhalation. I have still not seen the evidence that suggests that these ultrafine particles will be contained within the system. Councillor Leslie spoke to the unacceptable health risks that they carry if that's not able to be achieved. The risks of cancer, reproduction dysfunction, and congenital birth defects. I know that people want to dismiss Eastern Creek, but Eastern Creek was rejected by a three-part independent planning commission on human health, environment, and water risks. The waste incinerator position in the landscape that we've now made a decision as a council, remembering that the original proposal was described as West Lithgow, was actually mapped as Portland, but was meant to be Wang. Now, I raised my concerns with the rigour around this process at the very first points when we arrived at it. And so what we now find is that those people who are familiar with Lithgow 20 or 25 years ago when we had coal smoke being captured in our cup-shaped valleys, this council of another era took a lot of great measures to improve air quality and to shed us of the tag of being a dirty old town. They were very clear about their intent to make Lithgow a much more livable place. And these cup-shaped valleys, whilst they provide fantastic photos out at Lake Wallace on a cold winter's morning as the warm air holds the colder air to hug the ground surface, it contains potentially any pollutants that are in the air. And that extends out to Lithgow. If anyone wants to have a look at a modelling for potential plumes from waste incinerators, you can go on to lithgow.com, plot the plume lithgow.com, and you'll find real-time modelling of the extent. And as I said, Lithgow Region's historically had some of the worst air quality in the state. We don't now. Lithgow is one of the most livable places to come to, as is Wallerawang and Portland. The whole region is a remarkably beautiful place. It's got all the values, natural values of the Blue Mountains, but has so many other values in it. And I know there's been a push with the Seven Valleys as part of that. Also found within the range of this waste incinerator is one of our peak visitation points, Lake Wallace. And then just to the northeast is one of the most upper end tourism opportunities with the Wolgan Valley Emirates. Now, we see some of our future being in tourism, and certainly that's going to be a big contributor. I don't think that having a waste incinerator is going to assist that. Now, I've spoken directly to Brett Hawkins and the CEO of Greenspot. I'm extremely excited about everything that goes around the power generation point in this proposal. I'm very excited about what Stephen Jackson visualises as well in the job opportunities that are there. We need to change the power source. We talked about two steel cities, Lithgow, which made the first steel, and Newcastle, that continue to make steel. They've both reimagined themselves very differently as they go through this economic transition. Newcastle decided to put a solar farm on one of its ex-waste facility, hoping to get $250,000 in income. Within the first 6 months, received $400,000 in income. Quite a deal greater than the income we're looking for in some of our rates variations at the moment. And
excuse me, Councillor Marnie, I've been asked to notify you that you've gone over 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. A councillor, I don't believe, gets extensions. Is that correct, Mr General Manager?
I'm happy to move one.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Please continue. Thanks, Councillor Marnie.
Thank you, Mayor. The other concern I have is that we position this, and this is part of the reason there was concerns in Western Sydney, its proximity to residential landscapes and schools. We've got a primary school which is in close range of this, where children spend 5/7 of every week for 75% of the year for 40% of their childhood. Now, if we don't get this right, that's a significant exposure in our development stage for these children. We also have houses that gather rainwater off their roofs, and they use it for domestic purposes. So what I've found going around to these meetings and talking to people, and I remain a fairly open person. I know sometimes if you're an opponent to things, you get characterised as alarmist and oppositional and so on. I like to have a considered approach to the decision. And the big issue for me is that as an older man, and generally older men, unfortunately in our politics, have owned many of the decisions for the future. It's good that we've got a greater representation of women here. But as an older man, I own the decisions for the future. But when I met young families with their little ones and their new babies, they own the future. And that has to be at the centre of my thinking. And so I'd just like to wrap up. I thank the community for coming and speaking tonight, but unfortunately, I haven't been convinced. I wasn't convinced in the 7 days that I got to consider this before a decision went ahead, and I certainly wasn't convinced when the community had 48 hours to talk to me about the upcoming decision. So unfortunately, I'm supporting Councillor Leslie's rescission motion, and I do that with a considerable concern. It's not something I do easily. So the merits of this haven't been proven, and I'm still yet to be convinced regarding the emissions. So I thank you for those who allowed me the extension of time.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Now, is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor.
Hi, I'm just quickly going to talk about the Australian Government Agency, Australian Renewable Energy Agency, called ARENA. It is a website. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. Now, there is 2 plants in Western Australia, both backed by the Western Australian Government and the Australian Government. The Kwinana Waste-to-Energy Facility is an important and significant renewable energy project for Western Australia and Australia. It was the first thermal utility-scale waste-to-energy facility constructed in the nation. It is approximately 40 k's from the centre of Perth. And the benefits are Macquarie Capital estimates that approximately 486,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions will be avoided per year, compared to the carbon dioxide emitted from grid generation electricity in Western Australia. Their grid generation electricity is from powerhouses. So now they've got a second one going in at Rockingham, which again is south of Perth. They're 2 major projects for the Western Australian, and it is on the Australian Renewable Energy Agency webpage, which is an Australian government webpage. With that, I cannot support the rescission motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor McGee?
Yes, I'd just like to speak regarding anyone labouring under the illusion that this is not political. You know, as we heard Councillor Leslie speak clearly, that blaming federal and state government. Go for your life. No, without a doubt, it's very much would appear to me to be a Labor Party pushed motion and crowd. Absolutely, we've got 2LT here.
Point of order, Councillor McGee. Point of order.
Peter Watson from 2LT, who has shown nothing but disdain and contempt for
Point
this
of order,
council.
Mayor Statham.
I would have to agree with that, I'm sorry, because that's what has occurred.
A point of order.
Point of order, Councillor McGee. Thank you.
How do I call a point of order on the Mayor for that comment?
No, I have proof of that. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell, and Mr Watson knows. Please, Councillor McGee, but please don't make any accusations you can't stand by.
Yeah, they're all stand by. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it, just for the people labouring under the illusion that, you know, this is transparent.
Councillor McGee. I will not discuss what has happened between Mr Watson and Council. It is not the right place. I'm not going to ask Councillor McGee to withdraw what he said. Anybody else wishing to speak on the matter tonight? Councillor Goodsell?
I've already spoken.
You can't speak twice, I'm sorry. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I'd like to...
Excuse me, we can't have any discussion from the public gallery. I'm sorry. Your time has already been allowed. Look, I'm not making these rules.
Just go to the right of reply.
So, right of reply, thank you, Councillor Leslie.
I'd just like to say to Councillor Marnie that it's not my rescission motion, it's Councillor Coleman, Councillor Marnie and Councillor Leslie's rescission motion. It's our rescission motion. So it's and I thank them for their support. But waste incinerators are expensive. The installation of an incineration plant is an expensive process. Once built, they need to be fed. There is no process that allows them to be shut down. Any failures will be ignored. A fine here or there, a slap on the wrist, but nothing substantial, nothing that would close down the plant. A transcript from Ben Fordham's report to TGB on the 19th of April, just last week. More than 24 fire trucks have worked to control the fire inside a chemical storage warehouse in Western Sydney. 28 fire trucks are responding to the blaze at Cleanaway liquid waste facility in Christie Street, St Mary's. Ben Fordham of 2DGB has revealed that this is the second fire the company has had in the last 6 months, with their first at their Glendenning site. They have been fined multiple times by the Environment Protection Agency. A worker has been flown to hospital with burns and remains in a serious condition. So, keep that in mind. Waste incinerators pollute the environment, particularly farming land. They damage public health. Ash waste is bulky, contains harmful residues, and it allows the government to avoid making hard decisions. Genuine waste minimisation schemes will be put on the Never Never, and genuine recycling schemes won't take effect. Did you know that for decades, doctors and scientists were paid by cigarette manufacturers to say how beneficial smoking was to human health? Millions of people died as a consequence. Put the incinerator at Mossman, and suddenly you will have scores of experts telling you and telling the world just how bad it will be. If we don't rescind this motion, the outcome will be that Lithgow, according to the government, doesn't care, so let's give them more.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the rescission motion, please. All those against?
Could we have a division on that?
There will be a division. All those in favour of the rescission motion? Councillor Leslie, Councillor Marnie, Councillor Coleman. All those against? Councillor Goodsell, Councillor McGee, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Bryce, Councillor Goodwin and Councillor Statham. Thank you for all attending tonight. Who are you suggesting has lied? Excuse me, Councillor Goodsell spoke very well tonight about the information we did not have. Anyway, it's over now. Thank you for coming.
You'll be out of the job.
Can
There'll be a recess
can we
of
please
3
have a
minutes,
recess, please?
I'll reconvene the meeting now. Thank you.
Oh, where's Councillor Bryce? Here she is.
(9.1) Notice of motion. Beautification of streetscape through tree planting and cleaning up verges. Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Mayor Statham.
Happy to second that, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie.
And first, if I may, I've just had it brought to my attention that during the heat of the moment in that last debate that I said some things regarding Peter Watson, and I'd just like to apologise unreservedly for those comments. And yeah. Well, it was just all got a bit hot, and
It has been broadcast, Mr. Watson.
Yeah, so it's all there. But I do apologise unreservedly and terribly sorry. But regarding the motion, thank you for seconding, Councillor Marnie. It in the cut and pasting, it must have gotten a little bit messed up because it certainly was. It did not go into the order of business as it was written. So I might just read it because it comes across a bit better the way that it was originally written and not chopped up. But the cleaning up and presentation of verges in front of houses is currently a council responsibility that with limited resources we're struggling with, especially in new residential areas, primarily sort of Hartley area and stuff like that, the new subdivisions out around Portland, stuff like that. The first impressions of anyone's house is from the street or road access and therefore of the utmost importance. The maintenance of these verges is predominantly undertaken by the residents themselves. However, currently people can be stopped from planting trees and cleaning up their verge. Primarily down the example in question, the point in question is down on Bayners Lane. Some people nearly all the way down the end there, and it's rocks and clay out the front, and they've been told that they can't clean it up, that it's our job, our responsibility. Now they just want to clean up the front of their house. You know, they've finished building the house, it's a beautiful house, but they just want between the front fence and the streetscape done. So basically in anything that's under 100k zone, so, but I'll go into that in a sec. So currently can be stopped from planting trees and cleaning up their verge. The practice of planting street trees is a long-standing one. It is well proven to enhance the landscape for the appreciation of residents and visitors alike. So the recommendation comes in there that the council allow residents and owners who wish to enhance their verges be allowed to do so, with a simple and easy to follow advisory section on our council website. Now it would advise predominantly for small to medium trees, which are very easy to manage, you know, like your prunus, your cherries, plums, traditional street trees, Acer palmatum, Japanese maples, but even like Gay Mason said, you know, big trees, this is advisory. This is not set in stone. This is advisory. So advise people, you know, work with people instead of, you know, a knee-jerk reaction, no. So put the basics, like very much like what's outlined in the commentary from council. You know, if it's a 20-metre wide nature strip, how far back to plant the trees, how far we mow to in certain areas, when they can expect those areas to be mowed, what they can and can't do. Most people just want grass that they can maintain, which is reduction of bushfire hazards, which is not mentioned in our response, but is the main thing for a lot of people, is just that slightly less hazardous bushfire event. We've had a very wet season and, you know, it hasn't really eventuated any real bushfire threat, but they're never far away. This is Australia and we'll have bushfires again. So pretty much that's it. For and also, you know, like in that advisory section on the website, go into and have pictures of so for example, the endangered species of plants in our LGA that would prohibit any works at all. would be pictured and listed and in the areas where they might be found, because there are species which are protected. A recommendation to small, medium, low maintenance trees be used, and for good reasons why. But once again, not set in stone, not a rigid thing. If people wish to plant oaks, they are great shade trees, you know, and you know they do a good job. But still, let people know. And those oaks down at the Hoskins are not 80 years old. They're not that old yet. You know, and the liquid ambers, you know, just to have those few examples of what happens when you get it wrong. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And
thank you.
I just think that taking the pressure off, we don't need this to be, you know, sort of really policed or anything like that. It shouldn't need approval. It's just people doing the right thing by their front verges. And as far as, you know, the maintenance, if people were to buy a property, they're not going to all of a sudden turn around and just stop looking after the front of the property. That's not realistic. That's not going to happen. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor Marnie.
Okay, I think there's a typo just in the title. Whilst there's some very good souls that live in our streets, I don't think they'll be at that point heading towards sainthood. But if they do plant trees, I'm happy to nominate them and push them up the line. But I concur very much with the intent of this motion from Councillor McGee. I think when people visit Orange, they come back in autumn and talk to us about how brilliant Orange looks and how it presents. When people go up into the north coast around the Macleay and they see the jacarandas, or in fact see the magnolias here in Lithgow, there's similar sort of effects. My suggestion was very strongly supporting it, and I'd like to think we encourage our residents to take this on. I think it needs to come through some sort of policy advisory pathway. I know that several councils have got roadside garden policies so that you don't take out people's access via footpaths, things like that. We've also got underground and above services, gas, NBN. If you're going to plant your favourite tree, only to put it through some optic fibre or something, it may not make your day. So, I think all that advisory you're suggesting there is good. I don't know where this sits as a policy development, whether there's a street tree master plan. If there is, perhaps it's an opportunity to review it and look at some of the suggestions from Councillor McGee, and I'd certainly be very supportive of it. So I don't know whether it's the Operations Committee or the Environment Committee that maybe this conversation lands. So that's all I'll say on this.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Mr Edgecombe will comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. First and foremost, I won't comment on the exact proposal of Bayners Lane, but in terms of Council's existing policy, we do absolutely support applications for streetscape beautification in urban areas. That's Bullerawang, Lithgow, Portland, any new urban residential subdivisions in Hartley and other like districts, Taranara and the like. We support, and not only support, but we encourage those to come through to council. We treat them with priority. We assess each area on its merits, and we speak with the residents accordingly, and we give them advice. We condition where required in order to get the best outcomes for the local community. However, in rural areas that becomes a little more difficult. There are more issues to contend with than in urban areas. For instance, rural areas don't have curb and gutter, so most properties are highly reliant on the road corridor and road reserve to effectively convey stormwater. In any instance where vegetation is installed within the road corridor, there stands a chance to impact, but positive or negative. I can't say one way or the other, but there stands to be an impact in those areas. Secondly, if a resident, it's not a matter of once a resident installs such features, stopping maintenance. It's more in the likely event that a resident sells their property or it moves on to alternative ownership, the land outside a property boundary is the responsibility of Lithgow City Council. We cannot, if a property changes hands, we can't force a rural owner to maintain those corridors. And in that event, then council is faced with removal or alternative measures of maintaining the area, whether it be by hand, which then we face resourcing issues, and the like. I come back to the discussion at a previous council meeting of the level of service being offered in our rural areas in terms of roadside slashing and tree removals. I understand that it's a contentious issue, and there are some thoughts that we may not be meeting expectations in that area. But if we are required to devote more resourcing to the maintenance of rural roads, then the levels of service will drop unless we spend more money and deliver better service. Lastly, I might just comment on the suggestion for conditioning of okay, no worries. So if there are any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, but I'll defer back to the debate.
Could I,
Thank you, Mr. Edgecombe.
please ask another question? And hopefully this will wrap it up. But
a question's fine, yes. Thank you.
Would it be best coming to the Operations Committee or the Environment Committee if there was looking at some sort of commentary or review of a street? Do we have a street plan, street master plan?
I'm unaware of that, but I think the councillors should make a decision on this tonight, whichever way it goes.
Madam Mayor, I think the final sentence indicates the preference of the administration. We're in the council's hands. If the council is of a mind to want to explore more about, we've already got an urban policy. Councillor McGee's motion goes to opening up to a rural policy. We're suggesting that come back with a report outlining the policy and all the material considerations. That's the administration's suggestion, but we're in council's hands. And it would be prudent to do that so that we understand the costs and the implications and what needs to give way if we're to do this policy, and also the programming of when we'd be ready to implement.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment.
Yes, Councillor Leslie, your amendment?
That the matter be brought back for a report so that we can get the pros and cons, the benefits and the problems, and how this matter would affect the current council's policy.
Happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsaid. Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I'll put the amendment. Any other discussion on that amendment? Yes, certainly.
Can I speak to that amendment?
Yes, you can.
Against it?
Against it, yes.
Yeah, because it's just kissing it goodbye again, like the bus stop, the mowing of the verges, the Capity Valley still has not been mowed. That was my first notice of motion months ago. A report was brought back on that, and it was a load of polywaffle. Nothing has happened. We need to make some decisions. This is simple. This is just an advisory thing. This is just, people can, just follow the simple instructions on the website where we just give you simple advice on what you can and cannot do out the front of your place, i.e. do not build a dam and block all the water when it's raining, they just want a bit of grass, majority of people, and a couple of trees. This is not a proposition from Wittgenstein, they're not going to build whole garden beds and stuff like that, because put that on there too, like on the website. Work with people, this should be simple. This is not a difficult thing, and it doesn't have to be policed. It's just, as I said, if they've got a 20-metre verge, then they can put trees 10 to 15 metres from that verge, which is another 5 metres from their fence. Simple, easy to follow guidelines. As I said in the notice of motion, dial before you dig. The onus is on you. The responsibility is on you if you start digging holes out the front, as it is now. But yeah, if you want to amend it and send it off for a report, then great.
Councillor Goodsell.
I just want to speak to the original notice of motion. Am I allowed to do that?
No, I'll have to put the amendment first. So who seconded the amendment? You seconded the amendment or second the motion? You seconded the motion. The amendment, sorry, I believe. Okay, sorry. Okay, so Councillor, excuse me? Yes, you can. Yes, Councillor Goodsell.
I think that's a good compromise. Just in Councillor McGee's, I understand where he's coming from, but in the recommendation it says that council allow the residents and owners who wish to enhance their verges to be allowed to do so. We currently allow that. Our policy 10.5, we support and endorse residents in our close-knit communities, in our residential communities to be allowed, and they need to apply. They need to apply. They can't put, and I don't believe, they can't plant a great big oak tree in a place where it's possibly going to have, a massive impact on our infrastructure. We've just seen a ridiculous amount of greenery removed from places like Suvla Street and Lemnos Street where it's disrupted our gutters. It is a process we have to go through, and I think Councillor Leslie's amendment is a good one. It's come back with a report on the pros and cons, and I certainly support that.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsall. Anybody else wishing to speak on the amendment?
Yes, Mayor Statham. Speaking to Councillor McGee earlier tonight and reading his motion, I thought it was a good motion, a good thrust of it. But after hearing the debate, I think we do need to have a report come back as to how this is going to be implemented. Out in the rural communities, people do want to clean up their verges. They do want trees. If we can get some type of agreement through council and through a committee to make that happen, I think it would be better for the community out in those rural areas and for council, so it doesn't affect some of the infrastructure we do have out there. So I'm going to vote for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the amendment?
And I understand, and I Councillor McGee understands that I appreciate his intent, and I think it is a good one, but we do need to have a clear structure around what happens with earth drains in rural settings, and obviously clearance, so that if we're going to do mowing and things like that, we need to build a bit of structure in the rural setting. I'm also aware of, I don't know if the Director Andrew Muir may recall this, but I believe the council was fined $132,000 from a memory where vegetation was cleared in a rural setting, and it included threatened species. Now I know Councillor McGee's addressed that in his statement, but we do need to make sure that we've got a system in place. There are a number of councils that have very good little tight reference points for urban gardens on your footpath. So, as I said, I seconded the original motion and I support Councillor McGee's intent. I just think we just need to do a little bit of work, and I can understand his frustration that ideas he's got may not be manifesting as an action immediately, but I think it's the right way to go. So,
thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak for the amendment? I'll put the amendment, please. All those in favour of the amendment? Against? The amendment has won. I'll make the amendment now the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Thank you. Item number 11.1, General Manager's Report. Algor Executive Appointment, Councillor Cassandra Coleman.
Happy to move
this, please.
I'm happy to move it, but I'd like to make an amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. What was your amendment?
This is Algor. I just don't believe that we do. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Coleman. She spends an awful lot of time dedicated to this cause. My only concern is that we don't usually approve costs without costs actually being visible in the paper. I just would like to know, and I'm really, really grateful that she's attending the as many meetings and forums as you can be live streaming. I know that's a very sensible decision, and I know that you wouldn't like to do that because you like getting about in that pink car and tripping around and promoting Lithgow. And I think you've done a tremendous job doing that. I'd like to, number one, to stay as it is, and if it doesn't have any impact on Councillor Coleman's immediate needs, I'd like to report back on just the costs for Councillor Coleman to attend the annual conference regarding registration, travel and accommodation. Even a rough guesstimate, just so that we're not approving nothing.
I second that amendment.
I ask her? Yes, please. Thank you. Mr Gurney, some clarification, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. As stated in the report, the most recent cost of the annual conference was $1,333 for attendance. Depending on the location, there may also be travel and accommodation.
I think that, sorry.
Councillor Marnie?
No, Bryce. I'm Bryce.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Bryce.
Okay. We've got a cost
Just
there.
go back, please. Could I have a seconder, please, for Councillor?
I did second it.
Yes, I thought you did. Right. Thank you, Councillor Bryce.
The thing is, the cost doesn't include travel, accommodation, expenses. We need a breakdown of that in the amendment. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Coleman, do you think it's an idea that you should have declared a conflict of interest? We're talking about money, and you're...
The General Manager needs to advise that.
It's up to you, of course.
Look, I've never left the chamber previously in regards to this issue.
We're talking about finances at the moment.
And I don't leave for the local government conference. It's a similar situation.
No worries at all.
Sorry, may I speak again?
No, you've had your...
I'm happy to withdraw that amendment. Considering the information that Mr Gurney's just given me, and also the fact that we don't put... I've attended, just thinking spontaneously then, I've attended local government conferences that they don't come back to council for approval. I'm happy that Mr Gurney's given me that information. I'm sorry for being problematic.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Just one moment, please, Councillor Goodwin. We now need a mover for the motion on 11.1. Thank you.
I'll move the motion as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Leslie?
No, I don't wish to speak to it.
Councillor Marnie?
Probably the camera didn't. Hello. I just was saying that I'm happy to support Councillor Coleman's involvement for this. I think it's important we continue to promote women in government, particularly in regional New South Wales. So I think the work's been terrific, and so nothing further to add to it.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Goodwin?
I have a couple of questions, if I can direct them to Councillor Coleman, if that's okay.
Is that permissible, Mr General Manager?
I just want to know where that conference is this year.
Mayor, the questions need to come to the chair,
yes.
And you can allocate them or distribute
them.
Statham,
where is the actual annual conference held?
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Councillor Goodwin, sorry.
Sorry, where is the annual conference held this year? How long does it go for? And we've expended obviously 1,179 this year. I've got to have no dramas at all. Expending, a 1,000 or a bit over 1,000 on Councillor Coleman going to a conference. But then, yes, I want to know where it is, and I want to know how long it's for.
Are you happy for me to answer that, Mayor Statham?
That's up to you, Councillor
I'm
Coleman.
happy to answer the questions because no one else is able to. The conference is in Fairfield, so it's only an hour and a half, 2.5 hour drive. It will go for 2 days.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. You satisfied with that, Councillor Goodwin? Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. (11.1.2) National Assembly of Local Government, the conference. Thank you. Could I have somebody move this? Thank you.
I'm happy to move it, but I understand that it's yourself, Mayor Statham, and myself as Deputy Mayor, and then there's 2 other councillors that would like to attend. So I'm not sure who would like to volunteer.
Due to constraints with our budget, Councillor Coleman, I definitely will not be attending, and nor will the General Manager. It's a wise decision that I didn't even hesitate. I believe at the moment we have a lot of other things on our plate that take much more priority going to the National General Assembly of Local Government. So I will not be going. I'll be withdrawing. Never at any stage was I going to attend, but certainly I know the bottom line with our council finances, and there's no way that I'll be attending. Thank you.
So is it been recommended that we don't go at all? Can I have some advice?
I personally would like to recommend we do not go to the National General Assembly of Local Government for this year only.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. I can't take part in the meeting, but I want somebody to move, please, not second it.
I'll move that.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Can I have a seconder, please? Second, Councillor Bryce. Councillor McGee, would you like to speak to that? Thank you.
Yes, I think, as you said, the constraints, financial constraints that we're under at the moment, I think it's a lot of money for, from what I hear, very little gain, if to no gain.
Councillor Bryce.
Same opinion. It's a lot of money for very little gain.
Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Marnie.
Sorry. Just a question. Just given a reliance on some funding from the federal government, does this conference allow for opportunities to talk to that issue, network ideas at the conference? I'm not interested in attending, so I'm not building a case for my own attendance. I appreciate the Mayor's stance on the cost issue, but I just need to know in my own mind that there is little value that comes out of this.
Anybody else wishing to speak for or against that?
I'd like to speak. First of all, I'd like to ask a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes, certainly.
Financial assistance grants come from the federal government, and this is the Australian, the National Assembly of the Local Government Conference. First of all, as I understand it, financial assistance grants currently is 0.55% of total taxable income. It has dropped over years, over a number of years, from 1% to 0.55. Just my question is, how much money does Lithgow Council get from the federal government in untied grants, which are the financial assistance grants?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The financial assistance grant is around about 4.8 million, but I'll take that on notice and send a definite answer.
4.8 million, or plus or minus a million. I'm happy with that answer. And therefore, it's to me, it seems a very, very valuable that we have representatives representing Lithgow Council, supporting other regional councils, so that we can argue in the forum that the financial assistance grants due to local government, in particular regional councils, as has been pointed out, we, in the terms of millions of dollars, millions of dollars to pay for our potholes, our roads, our drainage, untied grants. to be spent as this council would see appropriate, and for the benefit of our communities. We need to be there to be arguing against city councils that are at the moment taking 30% of the financial assistance grants as a per capita item. Now, if you're in the city, you don't have to worry about roads, you don't have to worry about sewage, you don't have to, in most cases, you don't have to worry about cemeteries. There's so many things you don't have to worry about in the city. So much of it is just a matter of solving problems of the rich down there. But the problems we have in regional areas are so much different, and yet we're screwed every time by city councils. We need to be able to get there and represent it and fight for it. I'm disappointed, Mayor Statham, that you don't want to go and be able to be part of this fight, to be part of this process where we stand up for Lithgow and want to get our fair share from the government. We need to be able to persuade the government that the 0.55%, the reduction to 0.55%, needs to be increased to get it back to where it was promised in a couple of decades ago, back to the 1%. And the only place we can do that, the only place we can lobby, federal ministers, and by then, of course, we'll have. We may have the same government, we may have a different government, but we'll certainly have different ministers in charge, different ministers speaking to the conference, different ministers who will be able to put their position, and then in most cases it's possible to get questions to the ministers. So I think it's not just something that we can dismiss as being of little value to Lithgow. I think it's of importance, really important value to Lithgow Council, and I believe we need to be fully represented there.
Councillor Leslie, just to give you notification, there definitely is virtual, which is $689 per person, but I think dealing straight to the federal member, and whoever that may be in the future, which is way before the General Assembly, I will be, as Mayor, lobbying them as much as I can for financial assistance. In the whole time I was Mayor for 4 years, at not one stage did I go to Canberra for the Australian National Local Government General Assembly. I had so much feedback from other councils that it wasn't the right fit for Lithgow, but I would not miss a local government conference. They're very different. And if we have first-hand knowledge of who, when, and if the naming of the federal member will be, that will be one of my first ports of call. If, in fact, in the meantime I decide to do a virtual, I can do that. But at this point in time, as Mayor of the Council, I would like to say that money, that's many thousands of dollars that can be spent, yes, but it's also money that we can save, and that is our bottom line at the moment that I'm concerned about. Any other debate on this issue, please? Councillor Goodsell?
Yes, please. I'm with Councillor Leslie on this one. I don't believe that, even though I understand why yourself as the Mayor and the General Manager do not wish to attend, well, that'll save half the costs. If we as councillors choose to want to go and represent and advocate at something which we think we're going to get some benefit out of, I think that we should be allowed to attend.
A virtual, I would absolutely agree with that, Councillor Goodsell.
No, I'm just saying if there's two representatives here that are passionate and want to go to that to that assembly, we've got money, we've got a budget. You two aren't going. Well, we've saved half the money, but I don't think you can rule out a councillor's right to not attend if they want to.
I'm not ruling out their right not to attend. I'm encouraging them to think about we need to progress our own area and spend time in our own area in a difficult time financially. Councillor Goodwin.
Mayor Statham, I tend to agree with Councillor Leslie and Councillor Goodsell on this. Maybe if we can get a delegation of 1 or 2 rather than 4 to save some money. I still think we need a voice down at the conference. A voice in any parliament or any forum is very important when we're talking about money and people's livelihoods, especially out here in the West, and where we can advocate.
Can I ask another question, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, I would like to ask a question, but
So
Councillor
thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Leslie?
Yes, my question is, who was it that decided that the General Manager would not be attending?
I decided I would not be attending because I saw how much the bottom line was going to be.
That's not my question.
I did. Absolutely myself. The General Manager had nothing to do with that.
So you decided that the General Manager couldn't attend?
No, I didn't state that at all. Mr. Craig Butler came to me and said, I've decided not to go as well. Is that correct?
If the council's not going, I'm not going. But if the councillors need support, we will lend administrative support during the conference, if that's their will.
So should the council as a body decide to send representatives, would you or one of the executive attend? Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. General Manager.
Mayor, if the council sees value, and this is a forum for the elected council, so we're in your hands. We've got a resolution before. If the council decides to attend, my recommendation is that there be administrative support during that conference. But we'd strip that back just to one person.
I've got another question. Can I ask what the motion on the floor at the moment is?
It's on the screen, Councillor Leslie.
Okay. Well, I can't move an amendment because my amendment would be a direct negative of that, so I'll just merely vote against this motion. And foreshadow a motion should this motion be carried. I'll foreshadow a motion that two councillors. No, sorry, that we send three councillors and authorise the General Manager to determine which of his executive leadership team also attend. But that's my foreshadowed motion.
Anybody else wishing to speak to the original motion?
Can I just have an understanding what the motion is that we're currently voting on? That council do not send any delegates. Is that the motion that we're about to? Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'll put the original motion, please, which is council do not send any delegates unless by virtual, which is absolutely available at this moment.
That's not in the.
Could I have that added to please to the?
No, the mover has to.
Could I ask the mover please to add that if they would consider that correct?
Yes, that's fine.
That way we would save at least 50%, probably 80% of the cost entailed. And could I have a seconder please for that change? Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour say aye. Lost, thank you.
I'd like to move my foreshadowed motion.
You can, Councillor Leslie, indeed. Thank you.
That the council send three delegates, the deputy mayor and two other councillors to be determined after the motion is been put and hopefully carried, and that the General Manager either attend, or should he not choose not to attend, that he delegate one other member of his executive leadership team to attend.
Could you please add, Councillor Leslie, the name of the two councillors that are going, or the three councillors, or two beside the Deputy Mayor that will be attending as well in the same motion?
No, my motion was that that those two would be determined.
Okay.
After this motion has been put.
All right, thank you. I'll put the Councillor Leslie's motion. Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Point of order. There's no seconder on it. May I state that?
We haven't spoken to it. Have a seconder, please, for Councillor Leslie's foreshadowed motion.
Happy to.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Any discussion on this, Councillor Goodsell? No? Any discussion?
Yeah. By having three councillors and one executive, we've saved no money. We've gone back to the original four that were going to go. So there's no point in you, Mayor Statham or the General Manager, not to go because the cost is going to be the same. We have not saved any money. at the moment we're in the process of asking ratepayers to pay more rates, but still spending all this money. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else wishing to speak on that?
Yeah, I'd like. Yeah, I think that we have to get back to basics, and lobby. We have to build rapport with state and federal ministers, whoever they are, and whichever side of politics they are on. We have to build rapport with them, and that's not going to happen at a 1,000-person conference. You don't get much head-to-head time, I should not imagine. Yep, you'll hear them all speak, and you might get 5 minutes with them, but I've heard in the past of Councillor Leslie's frustration at getting things seemingly ahead.
I'd rather not be told what my frustrations are by another councillor, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I'll take that back. And yeah, no, I think that we have to get back. Write letters, write emails, talk to these people, and build rapport with them. And yeah, that's how we'll get ahead.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion?
Mayor Statham, I just have some questions, if that's okay.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. And through to Mr. Gurney, it states here financial implications, budget approved, 9,000 plus separate budget provided for state and national local government conferences. My question is, has this already been forecast into the budget? And if it's not forecast into the budget and delegates don't go, where does this money go? Does it get carried over to the following year? Does it get put to another budget? How does the money actually work? Where does it actually go? I can hear I understand that, councillors are concerned about the money being spent because we have gone out to the public for a rate increase, but someone needs to explain whether or not, if money isn't spent, where does it then go? Does it just continue through?
Mr. Gurney?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The budget is set in the policy 9.5, the councillor expenses and facilities policy, which is also on the agenda further on tonight. If the budget is not set at in the policy at a set figure, because obviously it varies from year to year and council may determine virtual attendance. The answer to your question is what happens if it's not spent. It's a budget saving. It doesn't carry forward to the following year. The budget is set on an annual basis.
May I ask a question as well then?
Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Coleman?
Does it make sense? So if it's a budget saving, it just sits within this policy. Can it be used somewhere else?
It can be used somewhere else if that is council's wish.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Goodsell?
Can I ask if anyone's interested in going?
Sounds a good question to me. Could I ask, please, for a show of hands?
If no one else would go, I'd like to go and argue the toss, but I'll talk about that in my speech and reply.
There we go. We can send 2 and not 3 delegates.
Speech and reply.
Councillor Leslie, your reply, thank you.
Can I ask a question just before we? Can I ask just one question?
Yes.
It says here the total cost will be a minimum of $12,954. We have a budget of $9,000. Where would this extra money come out of?
That was when the price of fuel was low. With fuel. Yeah. Mr. Gurney?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the $9,000 is the budget for councillor conferences. It's a separate budget allocation for this conference, for the state and national local government conferences. So it's budgeted separately.
So what's the budget for this one?
The budget's set is it's set at the amount of the conference depending on the number of delegates council wishes to send. So it does vary because the number of attendees can vary year to year. So, sorry, effectively, council will be setting the budget with their resolution tonight.
Right of reply, Councillor Leslie.
With the permission of the council, as having just heard around, that we move it to the deputy mayor and one other councillor, which is me. So we put my name in, if that's the wish. But in speaking of reply, yes, there's money to be spent. Yes, there's a cost. But the argument that I'm making is we're spending a small amount of money to try and make 100,000 money or more. It's the cost benefit analysis of the process to be able to support country councils in persuading the next federal government that financial assistance grants, as one particular example, is worthwhile lobbying. And the last time I was in Canberra, a number of years ago, at one of these things, we spent a lot of our time talking with ministers, and that was very valuable. And I think we need to do that, especially with, let's face it, there is the potential of a new government. May not happen, I agree, but if that does happen, we do need to be there, with other council oars from across the state, particularly regional areas, to push the value of support for regional councils.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Lost, thank you. Sorry. All those, put your hands up again, please. Yeah, carried, thank you. Report is 11.1.3, Western Sydney Regional Organisation of Councils.
Could I ask that we ask Councillor Coleman to come back in? She's left the room in anticipation of a different item.
And I've missed this item.
Well, this one's first, 11.23.
No, that's the late item. See here?
Oh,
It's under this theme.
Oh, okay. Can I have somebody please move this report? Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Have a second to thank you.
Could I ask what Councillor Bryce has moved? Because the
Western Sydney Regional Organisation Councils, West Rock, and the Central New South Wales Joint Organisation.
The recommendation I've got here is that the council determine its position.
That's correct. Could I have somebody move this, please? Councillor Bryce, are you happy to move this?
I'll move it, Mayor Statham.
Mayor, just for the councillor's benefit and to be clear, the recommendation is requesting the council to determine its position in terms of continuing membership of West Rock or not. So it requires a motion to be advanced one way or the other, or an alternate motion.
Can I ask, we've only just got this, I think, and I didn't actually see this on my computer before. Are we able to defer?
Can we move this to be deferred to the following meeting?
Yes, I'll move a motion, please, for this to be deferred.
I'll move that. Mayor Statham.
Have a second. Thank you. Councillor Goodsell, all those in favour say aye. Thank you. 7.2, and Councillor Coleman's going to declare a conflict of interest. Can I have someone move this,
yes,
please? A seconder, thank you. Thank you, O'Connor. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell.
No comment.
Councillor O'Connor. Anybody else wish to speak to or for or against?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it. Except that Councillor Coleman is the owner / applicant of this, it would never have come to council. But it's come to council as a requirement of her position as a councillor. So just to explain why really no one is talking about it, because on the whole, I believe that the council laws, at least I do, accept the decision that would have been made had it just been done under delegated authority.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? (11.2.1.2) variations to development standards under clause 4.6 of the standard instrument. Have somebody move this, please?
I'm happy to move it, Mayor Statham. I do have some questions, though.
Yes, Councillor Coleman, your questions, thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin.
It states here that the objectives of clause 4.6 are to provide an appropriate degree of flexibility in applying certain development standards to particular developments. And then it states to achieve better outcomes from development by allowing flexibilities in particular circumstances. What I'd like from the staff is, can they please give an example of degree of flexibility? And the other question I have, please, Mayor Statham, was what was the trigger that brought this to Council's administration? I just want to have a clear understanding, if that's okay.
Mr Muir, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. A development standard is something in an environmental planning instrument such as Council's LEP in this case. For example, it might be a minimum lot size. And I think in this particular case where it was exercised, the minimum lot size wasn't quite achieved by a minor percentage. I think it was 8%. Below the minimum lot size, and the discretion is able to be exercised through some standard delegations from the Department of Planning, providing it's reported back to Council that it's been exercised. So that probably the best example is the minimum lot size. What you might see, for example, is in some of our rural areas where you might have a minimum lot size, for example, say 40 hectares if someone wants to subdivide, but in a particular set of circumstances, the applicant might only be able to achieve a minimum lot size of, say, 39.5 hectares. So there is some discretion which is able to be exercised. They're probably the best examples I could probably bring up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Muir. Councillor Goodsell?
No, I don't wish to speak to...
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this? Councillor Coleman, right of reply?
No, I think it's pretty standard.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. 11.2.2 Economic Development and Environment General Reports. Can I have somebody please move this motion, this item? Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Have a seconder, thank you. Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor Bryce, would you like to speak to this?
No.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this?
Oh, I don't wish to speak for or against. I just have a question, if that's okay.
Yes, Councillor Coleman.
So it states in the report, page 19, the increased risk to the successful rollout of the new services such as the food, organics and garden or organics, FOGO, which the EPA has mandated by 2030. My question is, what's the risk to this service and when do we get this new service? I know that a lot of residents are very excited and looking forward to having a FOGO bin. So what would be the risk and When is our rollout happening?
Mr. Muir?
Thank you, Mayor Statham. The risk in relation to, I suppose, the two options spoken out by IPART in what was called the benchmarking option was that the mandated FOGO service by 2030, councils may have, of course, been forced to implement that service, but not able to recover those costs via that model which was proposed. Thus, I guess councils in their roles as waste management authorities saw the other option which was put forward as a better option, which wouldn't then place that at risk. In terms of the council's FOGO service, probably I cannot give a definitive date as yet. Certainly is definitely on the drawing board. I am anticipating in relation to our waste strategy work, which is being carried out now, that there will be some reports and some possible sessions with councillors coming up, which we might be able to target the likely time frame when we will be recommending to council that introduces its FOGO service.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Anyone else specifically wishing to speak for or against this? Right of reply. Councillor Bryce is out of the room. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 11.2.2.2.
I'm happy to move this item, Mayor Statham.
Thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mayor Statham. In reading the report, I just have a few questions. Look, I think it's a great idea, but it states in the report that the New South Wales Food Authority works with councils to provide marketing support and would assist promotion of the area. And then it states that given the number of food businesses in the Lithgow City Council area, the Scores of Doors program would assist promotion of the area as a food destination and reliable place of conduct business. So my questions are, how is council to provide marketing support? Is this a voluntary program? So a business signing up to it, and how do they sign up to it? And how will council be promoting this as an opportunity?
Mr. Muir, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Statham. The program has evolved in as much that it was previously a sign-up type of system, and we certainly did have some concerns about that. What the Scores on Doors program, though, will do, it will simply implement, I suppose, something additional to our current food safety program and our current inspection program that we are required to roll out every year. And those premises, if they do achieve a score, whether it be good, very good or excellent, they will be awarded that, and they will be entitled to put that sticker in their window, not only to promote the business, it promotes them as a venue, if you like, where they have achieved certain food safety standards. They can use that in their own marketing promotion, but also in our discussions on this, because it is currently implemented in other local government areas, there may be a view, if you like, that if these scores aren't awarded to venues in Lithgow, then perhaps the food safety in that area isn't as good. So because of that, it is seen as, in terms of that sort of natural marketing, if you like, as potentially a good thing for those businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Councillor Goodsell, anybody else wishing to speak for or against this? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. 11.2.2.3 ECDEV LEAP update. Mr. Muir, thank you. Oh, no,
Happy to move.
Could I have? Thank you. Councillor Goodsell.
Yeah.
Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor Marnie, thank you. Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to that?
Just quickly, thank you for the update. It's a very important project, as we're all aware. One thing that just sat with me is the data collected suggests that heading into the future there will be predicted low population growth. And in the absence of positive growth, growth is predicted to stagnate. Also note the community consultation process is being reviewed and may be brought forward into a more timely manner to provide our community for greater ownership of the transition plan. Well done to the General Manager and the Project Control Group. And I believe bravely stepping us in this direction. If we are to do nothing, we are to go nowhere.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Marnie?
Just a brief comment, just to also support the comments from Councillor Goodsell. I also appreciate that there's been a recognition of the growth in numbers in the healthcare sector. Also coupled with the housing affordability issues, I think that's great. I am getting approached by people with some really great ideas, and I know they've been in contact with the council team, and that's been great. So I'm really pleased that there's a bit of future thinking going on in this. I know of one particular project where if I posed a question to people, where was the only solar train developed in Australia, most people would be looking somewhere else other than State Mine Gully. And the fact that it's up there operating as a passenger and tourist train in Byron Bay, I'm sort of hopeful that I know one of the speakers spoke to Ann Thompson about opportunities for rail. I think what appears to be pretty much a dormant rail maintenance section over in the National Pacific area, if we could see an activation of that space. I understand the person's currently employing around 40 people, and they're exciting things that are happening quietly in the background, and that's the thing about Lithgow. There's a lot of people who get on with doing some really great things with not much fanfare. So I think this whole process will shine a light on some of those opportunities, and really look forward to the completion of the process. But no, well done to the staff involved, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak
I
for or
do.
against?
Yep.
Councillor Bryce?
Yep. It says in the report that mining has the highest contribution to the Lithgow economy with $489 million per annum, employs approximately 900 people. Healthcare employs similar levels but produces only $81 million. When that industry goes, if we don't do something about this these people will leave. They're high-paying jobs. You know, the average coal miner, I don't know, 150, 160,000. That's just a Fed. They're not going to stick around for low-paying jobs. We need to make sure that we get higher-paying jobs in the town to be able to make up the loss of the mining industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Coleman?
I was nearly going to make the same statement. However, I have a question in regards to 900 people from mining. My question, and I acknowledge the comments that Councillor Bryce has made, do we actually know how many actually live within the local government area? I'm curious to know whether they live, if they live, do they all live here, or is that just approximate? I'm just curious, that's all.
Yes, I'll allow you a question, Councillor Bryce.
Answer, yeah, all right. So I looked up the statistics for Lithgow of how many people live in Lithgow and how many people work. So there's approximately 21,000 people working in Lithgow, live in Lithgow. Out of that, 10,000 people are employed, and nearly 9,000 people work in Lithgow, most of those in the mining industry. Thank you. We're very few that live in Bathurst or Mudgee. Some live in Penrith, but not many.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Coleman?
No, I want a definite answer. So 900 people from mining, do we actually know how many actually live within the LGA? Is it half? Is it 1/3? Is it 2/3? Just, rough. Would Mr Muir be able to answer that?
Mr Muir, thank you.
I do have those figures. Whether it's specifically by precise industry sector, but I might have to take that on notice.
Thank you, Mr Muir. Any more discussion on this? Councillor Goodsell, right of reply.
Just quickly, I did see a Facebook post from Lithgow City Council about the LEAP project, and I had lots of comments directly to me. What was it? Bit of fluff and bubble. It'd be good if we could attach some of this information, this stuff that we've actually got in the report, to that Facebook announcement, so that people have got a little bit more understanding of what we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. On-site sewage management strategy. Could I have somebody move this, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce.
Yes, I'll second it.
Councillor Bryce, seconded Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Bryce, thank you.
No comment on this.
Councillor Goodsell.
I do have a question. Sorry for not facing you. Just making sure I've got the right item, Mayor Statham. Is this 11.2.2.4?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so just in dot point 3 in the recommendation, if no submissions are made, actually I don't think I may have it wrong. I might withdraw that. I think I've read changes for charges.
Submissions will be invited for all of these issues, thank you.
Or changes proposed. I thought it said charges proposed, and I was going to ask what the charges were.
So you're right, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Bryce, right of reply. Councillor Marnie.
Just through you, Mayor. Just wanted to be clear in my head. So there's a range of people out there with varying age classes of septic systems and whatever. So are we going back through all properties, and are they having a charge applied to them? If I can just clarify that, please.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. There's not actually much change to the existing on-site sewage management strategy, which is, we're giving it now the weight of a council policy if the council agrees, so we're calling it council policy. The current strategy, which has been in place for some time, divides existing systems into high risk, low risk and medium risk categories. And also there are approvals required at the start of a new system.
Yep.
What the proposed changes, they don't propose to change. For example, a high risk system gets inspected, I think that on an annual basis. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, sure.
A medium risk system and a low risk system every 5 years. Now that inspection regime will continue. One of the changes proposed is to bring in aerated systems, and those are the systems which aren't currently brought under the policy in terms of an inspection regime. And it also brings in charges for approvals to operate in the initial part. But apart from that, it doesn't really make significant material changes to the existing on-site sewage management strategy.
Okay, just one follow-up question, I'm sorry. So we've, obviously, our end game would be deferring to have septics on sewer, on reticulated sewer. Is there a plan which, like if people are going to go to an upgrade and there might be a plan to have a sewage line running through to that location in 2 years, is there any integration between the two processes?
Look, it's a good question, and it has been raised, for example, in relation to Cullen, which are currently, I think most of the systems, for example, in that area are high-risk systems, and they're subject to inspections. But what would happen when the reticulated sewage system comes on board? They simply come off, and they're no longer part of this regime. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Are there any other speakers on this, please? Councillor Bryce, right of reply. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. 11.2.2.5, New South Wales Government Community Events Program funding.
Happy to move, Mayor Statham.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. A seconder, please. Councillor Marnie. Councillor Coleman, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Statham. This is a great opportunity to get our community involved in funding, for events. Great funding opportunity, great events, to promote reconnecting regional New South Wales community events program. I was recently at Parks for the Elvis Festival, absolutely loved it, and the people were there were just packed. And I know that they've received funding recently, but I think that events are really important, and I think this is a great opportunity to bring Lithgow together.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Marnie?
No significant addition. I agree with Councillor Coleman, and it's interesting. It's targeted for free, and they're open to all members of the public. So it's a great way for communities to come together. So I think it's a great initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against?
Just a question, if I may, is Ironfest and Lithgow, would both of those events be included in this program?
Mr Muir, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. We had made some inquiries in relation specifically to Ironfest, because that has been something on our agenda. At face value from those initial inquiries, particularly because it's a private event that charges a fee, it probably wouldn't come under this particular funding category. But of course, what we'll be, I suppose, officially and unofficially looking at doing is advocating and looking at other opportunities for Ironfest.
And Lithgow?
Lithgow is an interesting one. It may be that council, what the funding guidelines talk about in relation to existing events is that if you're looking at making that event bigger and better, then the funding certainly could be part of it. But that would be an additional to a council allocation. Whether it could be a situation might come up where the council's funding from its own revenue sources could be used for the next upcoming event. That's a matter which has been raised. We're not sure if that's really what will come under it, but it may. But Lithgow, if you look at the dates for this funding, so this year's Lithgow, which is already happening, won't come under it, and it might miss out next year again. So that one might be problematic.
Sorry, and one more, if I may. The Wang fireworks at New Year's Eve.
Private, but as I understand, not subject to any entry fee. So it may well be. May well be.
Perhaps someone might tell them then.
That leads into my next question, Mayor Statham, may I talk?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Goodsell.
I'd like to be privy. Council's going to call for expressions of interest from community groups. I'd like to be privy to that list. I'd like to know who those community groups are. I'd like to know how you identify them and whether we're covering every single community group in our whole local government area, or is it just, that the same people seem to be getting the same grants? And, sorry, Mr Muir, there's another question for you. The little one-off community groups that this might really assist, we're able to support them through that application process. But they might just look at it and think that, well, that's too hard. And are we able to get a list of the community groups?
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Mr Muir?
Mayor Statham, I might just reply to that. The ambition and the commitment of this council would to be as inclusive as possible. So we'd be casting a really broad net, and in this regard, we're really benefited by the foundations that have been laid by our Community Resilience Officer, Rachel Nichol. One of the great things of this city, as I think the council are acknowledging, are the fantastic groups, big and small. So we would be reaching far and wide and advertising extensively. So we'll at least advertise, and for everybody that we go to directly, we'll send a memorandum to the council.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Anybody else wishing to for or against, or Councillor Coleman, right of reply?
No, I'm happy for the motion to be put.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. Infrastructure service reports, proposed naming of roads, Bowen Vista Estate. Have a mover, thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goodwin. Councillor O'Connor.
Happy to go with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, I'm still happy to go with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Is there any dissent on this?
I have an amendment, if I may.
Councillor Leslie, what is your amendment?
That in point 1, that the word trench be replaced with the word Lewis.
Can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman.
Could I speak to it now?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
The Lewis family has put in a submission to this council asking that it be Lewis Close and Pentwyn Reserve for, instead of Gunners, Pentwyn Close instead of Gunners Close. I think the name Gunners is ugly and just doesn't do anything for me, but it does appear, at least it's vaguely related to the site. But Trench Place is totally inappropriate. There were no trenches or very few trenches in the Second World War. There was very few in the Pacific War related to it. It's just out of place. You might as well call it Strongbow Close, for all the relevance it's got to the wars. Now, interestingly enough, the word Lewis has a number of meanings. One, it recognises the original owners of the land, and the other one, of course, is that
it's not the original owners of the land.
I apologise for that. It recognises the original farm and the people who owned that farm. And indeed, I'm aware of that as I showed earlier in the comment about in the Mayoral minute. So that was an oversight on my part, but Lewis, as I was saying, has two meanings. One, it's the family name, and secondly, of course, it's a gun. There's a Lewis gun. So anyone who looks around Lithgow and sees Rifle Parade, Martini Parade, Musket Parade, they're at Carbine Street, they're aware of that Lithgow does have a history of naming streets after various armaments. Now, the owners, the family will be perfectly aware that that their ancestors have been recognised in this way, and anyone who's just turns up out of the blue to look at the gun emplacements, and I've got no problem with Pentwyn Reserve as a name for the public reserve, then they of course will be quite comfortable about the fact that Lewis is part of a continuing tradition in Lithgow of a street naming. So I think it just fortuitously matches it on a number of occasions, and it doesn't look silly, doesn't look silly. It makes it right. And of course, we've already got a silly name in that area of Heritage Close in a street of 2022, 2023 houses. I mean, it's the silliest name ever in the world. But at least what I'm asking for is that we don't proceed with this idea of going down, with inappropriate names and names that are out of character with the setting.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman?
I think Councillor Leslie said it in a nutshell.
All right, thank you. Any other people wishing to speak for the amendment?
Just a quick comment. I think on the second page where staff would look for a solution to this, I appreciate that. I think the Gunners Close is important as far as that location. I am very fortunate that I'm moving to one of the last of the little dairies that service Lithgow, and I'm very keen on social history being captured. I appreciate the Pentwent Reserve as that reference. I tend to lean towards what Councillor Leslie saying, that there's an opportunity just to recognise that family and its role in the Depression and their role as a small dairy farming outfit. So, yeah, look, I think that mix of the military history and the social history, I like that blend. So,
thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the amendment?
Can I ask a question then?
Certainly, Councillor Goodsell.
Isn't the Lewis family going to be recognised in dot point 2?
That's correct.
Thanks.
That's if the recommendation is approved. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the amendment or right of reply?
Just want to make a comment. The Lewis gun was also a First World War gun, just like the trenches, so that's not really the reference we're after for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Hello? Yeah. Do I ask Councillor Leslie for right of reply? No. I'll put the amendment, thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Leslie's amendment? Against? I'll put the motion, the original motion now. Councillor O'Connor, right of reply?
Yep, just go with the original names.
All right, thank you, Councillor O'Connor. I'll put that motion, please. All those in favour? Councillor Marnie, you actually voted against that, I believe. All right. No, Councillor Leslie didn't vote. Beg your pardon? Those opposed to the original motion? Thank you, Councillor Leslie.
I'll have my name recorded, thank you.
Pardon?
I'll have my name recorded as
certainly
voting against.
11.3.2, tender evaluation, Civic Ballroom roof replacement and building. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Have a second. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goodsell.
Great to see a local building company won this tender quite rightly, and congratulations. Good to get on with the work.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, very happy that Dean Horton Building is doing the job.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Marnie.
Just a quick comment to reiterate Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Goodsell's comments. It's great to see a local business doing business with us, so that's a great outcome.
Thank you. Any dissent? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. (11.3.3) Financial assistance request for representation. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, just happy to endorse the funding for this little guy, Alexander Evans, and wish him all the very best in Adelaide.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Marnie.
Same. It's very exciting for a young fellow to be in the Nationals, so it's terrific. And this is something I've been proud of, what Lithgow Council has done for a very long time to support us young sports people. And all credit to the councils in the past and the staff for continuing this tradition. So,
thank you, Councillor Marnie. Any other people wishing to speak? I'll put the motion or try to reply, Councillor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Councillor Marnie just reminded me that as a young child, I received many council grants, and that was a bundle of joy to my parents that took me all over Australia playing sport.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. Finance and Assets Report. Could I have somebody move this, please?
No.
What have I missed? Sorry. Not page 11.4. Oh, Finance and Services. My apology. Have somebody move 11.5, please. 11.5.1. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Have a seconder, thank you. Who moved and seconded that?
Councillor Goodsell and Councillor Marnie. Councillor Marnie moved it, and Councillor Goodsell seconded it.
Councillor Marnie, would you like to speak to that? Thank you.
Right. Thank you. I have really appreciated coming on to council, the role of the Finance Committee. And certainly the reports that come out of that are very informative and assisting us with our understanding of our financial position. So again, very good, comprehensive and detailed report, so it's very much appreciated. Could I just ask one question through Mayor? Sewage testing for illegal connections, can I ask the nature of that? Is it related to stormwater or just still? Okay.
Mr. Trapp, thank you.
Through you, Mayor. The smoke testing and the testing for illegal connections, yeah, that's related to stormwater connections to the sewerage system, which causes undue inflow into the sewer scheme.
Okay. Could I, sorry, just to follow up, have you determined the locations or?
Not as yet. We're looking to do extension estate, so the areas between Hasson's Walls out to Muscat Parade.
Okay.
Those areas first, being the centre of Lithgow, where we have, I suppose, the largest concentration of roadways and curbs and properties as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Trapp. I'm really pleased to hear that. That's great work.
Thank you, Mr. Trapp. Councillor Goodsell.
Is this a delivery program and the operational plan? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Happy for that to go out on public exhibition.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Anybody else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Marnie?
No.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Yes. Community Strategic Plan 2035 and Community Engagement Strategy. Have somebody move this item, please?
Happy to.
Have a seconder, thank you.
I'll second it.
Councillor Bryce? Councillor Goodsell?
Just also happy for this one to go out on public exhibition for 28 days.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce?
I'm the same.
Thank you. Any dissent on this? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. 11.5.3 Resourcing Strategy 2022-2032. Have somebody move this item, please? Good, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Goodwin, would you like to reply to that?
Happy for it to go out to public exhibition.
Councillor Marnie?
That we investigate the natural area, our bushland reserves, that lookouts and walking tracks as a unit. I know the report talks to that it's including but not limited. So obviously, I think at this stage we have a general understanding of that asset group. I'd be certainly interested in seeing something coming back on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Goodwin, right of reply?
No.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Mayor, just as we do that for the public record, I just want to also acknowledge that this afternoon we distributed the Strategic Asset Management Plan as an attachment. It's only going out on exhibition. I apologise that wasn't able to be done with the business paper, but just to confirm the Council's decision is to accept that as a late inclusion into this report and place it out on exhibition. It will all come back to Council for adoption.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Item 11.6, Policies and Governance.
Happy to move with one change, please, Mayor Statham.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. That change would be?
To remove clause 13.1 to 13.7 inclusive. It states here, dealing with items by exception, recommended to allow Council to resolve to adopt multiple items of business on the agenda together. My issue with this is it's often confusing for the public, and I think that we need to deal with item by item, especially when we're debating it. The public need to be confident in who's debating what.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Coleman, would you like to speak to that?
I just did, Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Goodsell.
Yeah, I've been tripped up before when we've merged two different items together, and I thought I was voting for one thing and not the other. But, yep, happy to remove that.
Any speakers for or against? Councillor Coleman?
Just with that one change, please, Mayor Statham, and I'm happy.
All right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. I'll just get Mr Gurney to clarify one thing. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The motion as it stands would then include the other recommended clauses as per the report, which particularly relate to audiovisual meetings. They're the only changes to the original resolution.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's great. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could just...
yes, Councillor Leslie.
Mr Gurney did give me the courtesy of, as I moved this initially, by sending me an email explaining that he was going to do this, and I was happy with that. It was an oversight on my part when I missed it out. The AV meetings, had to be consistent, and he's clarified that, and so I was.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Yeah, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. 11.6.2, Councillor Expenses and Facilities. Have somebody move this item, thank you.
Happy to move, Mayor Statham.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Coleman, would you like to speak to that?
Not particularly. I just note that it'll be going out for public comment, and that's important.
Thank you, Councillor. No. Councillor Goodsell, no. Any dissent on this? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Council Committee reports. The first one is 12.1, Finance Committee meeting minutes.
Happy to move.
Have a seconder, thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Can they move and second it if they weren't there? Not really. They can't move and second it if they weren't there. How would they know if they're right? I'm just discussing whether or not you can move and second it if you weren't in attendance at that meeting. Okay, no issue. All right. You weren't at the meeting, Councillor Goodwin? Were you, Councillor Goodsell? Yeah. All right. No worries. Councillor Goodsell? No. Councillor Goodwin? No. All right. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie? You're okay? Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. 12.2, Audit and Risk Improvement Committee minutes, the 29th of March 2022. Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor Bryce. Councillor Marnie, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, happy to move it. Just with one question. Just wanted clarification on RFS assets, particularly buildings. Are they owned by council? Okay, thank you. And is it also the same with trucks and plant? Sorry, that's probably a difficult question.
I think Mr. Gurney would answer the trucks and plants.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The land and buildings are recognised by council in the asset register. The buildings are usually on council land. The matter of recognition of RFS plant and equipment is a matter of contention at the moment in local government. At the moment, Lithgow Council does not recognise the plant and equipment in our asset register. We don't feel that we have control of those assets, and it's an ongoing matter of to be resolved with the Audit Office and the Office of Local Government.
Okay, I might ask a question on notice, noting the important services that the RFS provide, but is it also what cash contribution do we make on an annual basis as well as a local government? I'm not suggesting we don't. I'm just interested in our investment in delivery of those services. I'm happy to take that on notice.
We're really dealing with the minutes from this meeting this evening, but if the councillor has a question about some detail, I'd be more than happy to take the council or other councillors through this issue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to do that.
Thanks, Councillor Marnie.
Councillor Goodwin. Not the wrong one, sorry.
Bryce.
Sorry, Councillor Bryce, beg your pardon. No comment? All
no
right.
comment.
Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. Item 12.3, TALC Committee minutes of the 7th of April 2022.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move this. I'm not sure where you're going to get a second. I was the only councillor there, so might be interesting. But the minutes, I believe, are self-explanatory.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Goodsell. Thank you.
Sorry, you need to second it.
Councillor Leslie.
The recommendation is the minutes of the TALC committee. I believe on the whole they're self-explanatory. I'm happy to answer any questions should any councillor ask, but I will just comment on the one 2.A, Kirkley Street. There's a roundabout in Kirkley Street which has a street coming off down to now Gunners Close, and there were people who were coming out of Stockade and cutting the corner instead of going around the corner. It's a sensible correction of that, to especially when Gunners Close starts having traffic come out of it, because there'll be not significant, but there'll be some, and you needs to make that corner much clearer. But otherwise, I think the recommendations are basic and simple.
Councillor Leslie. Councillor Goodsell. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this?
I just need to ask a question.
Certainly, Councillor Bryce.
The bus stop at Cullumbullen School, where's it getting moved to? It says, I didn't understand.
About, correct me if I'm wrong, about 50 metres to the north, on the same side of the road, just away from where the staff uses an unofficial car park. But otherwise, I'd suggest we ask the staff to get more accurate comments as to distances and measurements.
Could I have clarification on that, please, Mr. Edgecombe?
Through you, Mayor Statham, Councillor Leslie's correct. The area is simply being moved to reduce the interaction between staff vehicles moving to and fro from the area and school students coming on and off the school bus. So it's just to make a better distinction between the two. But if the councillors would like any further clarification, I'm more than happy to distribute some more information by memo.
North is in the direction of Mudgee.
Thank you, Mr. Goodsell.
I'm a little bit confused. Isn't the bus station already up? The bus stop already up there? It's right at the end of the school, isn't it?
I think it would be best if I just gave a memo later this week.
Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to that? Councillor Leslie, would you like to write a reply? I'll put the motion, please. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Business of great urgency. There being no business of great urgency, I thank you for attending the meeting tonight. Meeting closed officially. Thank you.